July 1991. Michael Jordan had just won his first NBA championship, the validation he'd chased for 7 years. He was the most famous athlete in America, a global icon, untouchable, or so he thought. 3 weeks later, in a hotel lobby in his hometown of Wilmington, North Carolina, Jordan learned a painful truth. No amount of excellence, no number of championships, no level of fame could protect him from the oldest hatred in America. What happened that night would force Jordan to make an impossible choice: stay silent and protect everything he'd built, or speak up and risk losing it all. This is the story of the moment Michael Jordan stopped being just a basketball player and became something more. The moment he learned that some battles can't be won with a perfect jump shot. The moment everything changed. The confetti fell like snow over Chicago Stadium, red and white paper swirling through the air as 20,000 voices screamed themselves hoarse. Michael Jordan stood at center court, cradling the Larry O'Brien Championship trophy like it was made of glass, like it might disappear if he blinked. His burgundy Bulls warm-up jacket was soaked through with champagne and sweat. His eyes, usually so fierce and focused during games, were wet with something else entirely. "We did it," he kept saying to anyone close enough to hear. "We finally did it." 11-year-old Marcus Webb couldn't believe what he was seeing. He sat on his father's shoulders in the middle of Dearborn Street, part of the million-person crowd that had flooded downtown Chicago for the victory parade. Marcus wore his prized possession, a Bulls jersey with the number 23, purchased after his father worked double shifts at the Ford assembly plant for 3 straight weeks. "You see that man?" Gerald Webb shouted over the roar, adjusting his grip on his son's legs. "That's what happens when you refuse to quit, when you work harder than everyone else. In America, Marcus, if you work hard enough, you can be anything, anything at all." Marcus nodded, unable to take his eyes off Jordan as the double-decker bus rolled past. The greatest basketball player in the world, right there, close enough that Marcus could see his smile, real and unguarded in a way it never looked on television. Gerald Webb believed what he told his son. He had to. It was June 1991, and the South Side factory worker needed to believe that his son's future held more promise than his own present. That this black man holding a trophy meant something beyond basketball. That doors were opening. On the bus, surrounded by teammates and cameras, Jordan felt the weight of more than just the 18-pound trophy. He caught sight of the crowd, a sea of faces, so many of them black, so many of them poor, all of them celebrating like this championship was theirs too. And in a way, it was. His agent had told him once, "You're not just selling shoes, Mike, you're selling possibility." Jordan hadn't fully understood it then. But standing here, watching children wave signs with his name, watching grown men cry with joy, he understood. Every time he stepped on the court, he was carrying something heavier than a basketball. He was carrying hopes, dreams, the weight of representation. Every move he made, every word he spoke, reflected on people who looked like him. The championship had taken 7 years. 7 years of playoff heartbreak. 7 years of critics calling him selfish, saying he'd never win the big one, saying he wasn't Magic Johnson, wasn't Larry Bird, wasn't a true leader. The Detroit Pistons had beaten him down physically for 3 straight years, elbowing and shoving and creating the Jordan rules specifically designed to stop him. But this year, this June, he'd swept them. Swept the Lakers. Swept away every doubt. Almost every doubt. As the parade wound through the loop, Jordan's mother's voice echoed in his head from their phone call that morning. Dolores Jordan had been proud, tearful, full of praise for her son. But at the end of the conversation, she'd said something that stuck with him. "You be careful down in North Carolina next month, baby. I know you're famous now. I know everyone knows your name. But some folks down there, they don't see the championships. They just see, well, you know what they see." "Mama, that was a long time ago," Jordan had said. "Things are different now." The pause on the line had been long enough to speak volumes. "I hope so, Michael. I truly do." Now waving to the crowd, Jordan pushed the conversation from his mind. This was a day for celebration. In 3 weeks, he'd head home to Wilmington for a charity exhibition game, a chance to give back to the community that raised him. His agent had booked rooms at some historic hotel downtown, the kind of place that showed the world that a kid from Wilmington had made it. The kind of place that, 30 years ago, wouldn't have let his father walk through the front door. But that was then. This was now. This was 1991, and Michael Jordan was a champion. He was bigger than basketball. He was a global icon. He was invincible, or so he believed. The bus turned onto Michigan Avenue, and the roar of the crowd swallowed everything else. Marcus Webb watched from his father's shoulders, eyes wide with wonder, not yet understanding that heroes bleed too. The July heat pressed down on Wilmington, North Carolina like a wet blanket. Dolores Jordan stood in her kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd raised 5 children and wiped down counters that were already spotless. Through the window, she could see the neighborhood, modest homes with careful gardens, American flags on porches, children riding bikes in the street. It looked peaceful. It looked safe. But Dolores Jordan remembered a different Wilmington. She remembered 1968 when Michael was 5 years old, walking past the Cape Fear Museum with separate water fountains still bolted to the wall. One labeled white, one labeled colored. She remembered the weight of her son's small hand in hers, the way he'd asked, innocent and confused, why they couldn't drink from the closer fountain. "That one's broken, baby," she'd lied, because 5 was too young to understand hatred. She remembered 1973, the year they closed Williston Industrial High School, the pride of Wilmington's black community, in the name of integration. The white schools absorbed the black students but fired the black teachers, disbanded the black sports teams, erased the history like it had never mattered at all. Michael had been 10 then. He'd watched his older brothers navigate the new world of integrated schools, watched them come home with stories that made their father's jaw clench at the dinner table. Stories James Jordan made them stop telling when Michael's eyes got too wide, too worried. Now her baby was coming home a champion, coming home with cameras and reporters and Nike executives, coming home to save a neighborhood that had never forgotten where he came from, even if the rest of the world tried to. The phone rang. Dolores dried her hands and answered. "Mama," Michael's voice was clear despite the distance. "We land in 3 hours. I've got your room ready. Clean sheets, your favorite." "Mama, I'm staying at a hotel, the Greystone in downtown. You know, the nice one they renovated a few years back." Dolores felt something cold settle in her stomach. The Greystone. The old Patterson Hotel, renamed and rebuilt. She remembered that building from her youth, remembered the stories her mother told about black maids who cleaned its rooms but could never rent them. "That's real nice, baby," she said carefully. "Real fancy." "Pop Herring helped set everything up," Michael continued, mentioning his old high school coach. Clifton Pop Herring, who'd believed in a skinny sophomore who'd been cut from varsity, who told Michael that rejection was just fuel, that pain was just motivation in disguise. The charity game's gonna be at Laney High, same gym where it all started. "Your father would be so proud," Dolores said, and immediately wished she could take it back. James Jordan wasn't dead. He was alive and well, planning to attend the game himself. But something in her tone suggested an ending, a eulogy, and Michael caught it. "Mama, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby, just, you be careful, okay? You're famous now, but..." "But what?" How could she explain? How could she tell her son, who just conquered the basketball world, that some battles can't be won with talent and hard work? That there were places where his championship ring meant nothing, where his face on every magazine cover was a threat instead of a triumph. "Just be careful," she repeated. "That's all." After they hung up, Dolores walked to her bedroom and pulled out an old shoebox from the closet. Inside were newspaper clippings, carefully preserved. Most were about Michael, his college championship, his NBA accolades, his soaring dunks frozen in black and white. But at the bottom was a different kind of article. Wilmington Daily Journal, April 1970. Disturbance at downtown lunch counter. She'd never shown Michael this clipping, never told him what happened to his father that spring day. James Jordan, wearing his work suit, his GE supervisor badge still clipped to his pocket, had sat at the counter of Woolworth's and asked for a cup of coffee. The owner had called him an animal, had told him to get out, had threatened to call the police when James refused to move, when he'd simply sat there, hands folded, determined to be served. James had come home that night with his dignity intact but his spirit bruised. He'd made Dolores promise never to tell the children. "I don't want them afraid," he'd said. "I don't want them angry. I want them to believe things can be different." 21 years later, Dolores held that newspaper clipping and wondered if things really had changed, or if they'd just gotten better at hiding the rot beneath fresh paint and renovation. Across town, at the offices of Wilmington Community Development, Pop Herring reviewed the logistics for the charity game one final time. At 72, with silver hair and hands gnarled by arthritis, he could barely make a fist anymore. But his mind was sharp, his organizational skills honed by 40 years of coaching. The event was sold out. Every ticket purchased, every folding chair in Laney High's gymnasium accounted for. The money raised would fund the new community center, a place where kids could play basketball on real courts with real nets, where they could do homework in air-conditioned rooms, where they could see what was possible. Herring looked at the hotel confirmation for Jordan's party, the Greystone Inn. 5 rooms reserved under George Kohler's name, Jordan's assistant. Everything confirmed 3 weeks ago. He'd chosen the Greystone because it was the best, because his former player deserved the best, because Michael Jordan coming home should be celebrated in the finest establishment Wilmington had to offer. Pop Herring had lived in Wilmington his whole life. He'd coached black players and white players, had navigated integration and its aftermath, had watched his city evolve slowly, painfully, incompletely. But he was a man who believed in progress, who believed that 1991 was different from 1970, that excellence could transcend prejudice, that Michael Jordan's success meant something fundamental had shifted. He had no idea how wrong he was. At 35,000 feet, somewhere over Virginia, Michael Jordan's private plane cut through clear summer sky. The Gulfstream IV was a recent acquisition, a symbol of how far he'd come from the kid who'd worked construction jobs every summer to help his family. Now he owned the plane. Now he decided where it went. George Kohler sat across from Jordan, reviewing paperwork with the methodical precision that made him invaluable. At 34, Kohler was a white man from Chicago's North Side who'd started as an equipment manager for the Bulls and somehow become Jordan's closest confidant. He handled everything: travel, scheduling, the thousands of daily details that allowed Jordan to focus on basketball. "Hotels confirmed," Kohler said without looking up. 5 rooms at the Greystone. I upgraded you to the presidential suite. Fred's got the marketing materials for tomorrow's press conference. Ahmed's already got dinner reservations at some seafood place your mom recommended. Ahmed Rashid lounged in the leather seat beside Jordan, long legs stretched out, Sports Illustrated open on his lap. The former Minnesota Vikings receiver had transitioned seamlessly into broadcasting, but more importantly, he'd become one of Jordan's genuine friends, someone who'd known fame and pressure, who understood the isolation that came with being exceptional. "Man, I haven't been to North Carolina since that '82 championship game," Ahmed said, grinning. "You were just a skinny freshman taking the biggest shot of your life." Jordan smiled at the memory. Coach Smith drew up the play for James Worthy. I just happened to be open. Humble now, Ahmed laughed. That shot made you, Mike, changed everything. That shot haunted me for 9 years, Jordan corrected. Until 2 weeks ago, every time someone mentioned it, I heard the unspoken question, but can you win as a pro? In the seat behind them, Estella Dunn tapped her pen against her notepad, listening. At 47, she was one of the few black female sports journalists in the country, a veteran of the Charlotte Observer who'd covered Jordan since his UNC days. She'd earned his respect by never asking stupid questions, never sensationalizing, never forgetting that athletes were human beings with interior lives. "Can I ask you something, Michael?" she said, leaning forward. Jordan turned. "You're gonna anyway. When you're this famous, this successful, do you think you're beyond it now? Or does it follow you everywhere?" The question hung in the air. Fred Whitfield, the Nike executive reviewing marketing proposals on his laptop, stopped typing. He was a 31-year-old black man who'd graduated from Howard University and climbed corporate ranks through a combination of brilliance and careful navigation of white spaces. He knew exactly what Estella was asking. Jordan looked out the window at the clouds below. "Beyond what?" "You know what?" Estella said quietly. Ahmed shifted uncomfortably. Kohler suddenly found his paperwork fascinating. "I just play basketball," Jordan finally said. "I let my game speak." "Your game speaks in millions of dollars in endorsements," Estella pressed gently. "It speaks in sold-out arenas and magazine covers. But does that make you immune to what people think when they see my skin before they see my resume?" Jordan's voice was even, but there was an edge beneath it. "You want me to say I still feel it? That success doesn't erase it. What good does that do anyone, Estella?" "It does good because it's true," she said. "Because there are kids who think if they just work hard enough, achieve enough, excel enough, they'll transcend it. But you know better, don't you?" The plane's engine hummed in the silence. Fred Whitfield closed his laptop. "I'll tell you what I know," he said. "I went to Howard, top of my class, got my MBA from Wharton. I work for one of the biggest companies in the world. And last month, a security guard at Nike's headquarters asked to see my badge 3 times in 1 week. Never asked the white executives, just me." "What you do?" Ahmed asked. "Showed him my badge 3 times, Fred said. "What else was I gonna do?" Jordan looked at Kohler, his white assistant, his friend. "You ever get stopped by security at Nike?" "Never," Kohler admitted quietly. "Exactly," Estella said, returning to her notepad. "So I'll ask again, Michael, are you beyond it?" Jordan leaned his head back against the seat, closing his eyes. Championship ring heavy on his finger, the weight of being a symbol pressing down like gravity. "I don't know," he said finally. "I guess I'm about to find out." Through the window, North Carolina appeared on the horizon, green and familiar and waiting. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "We'll be landing in Wilmington in 20 minutes. Estella Dunn watched Jordan's face, saw something flicker there. Anticipation mixed with something else. Something that looked like dread. She made a note. MJ uneasy about homecoming. Why? She had no idea how prophetic that question would become. The July sun hammered down on Wilmington streets as Jordan's convoy, 2 black SUVs and a rental sedan, wound through the city. Jordan sat in the back of the lead vehicle, window down despite Kohler's protests about privacy, breathing in the thick coastal air that smelled like pine and salt water and memory. Everything looked different, smaller somehow. The streets he'd walked as a teenager seemed narrower now. New buildings stood where empty lots used to be, a CVS pharmacy, a Wendy's, a strip mall with a Dollar General. Progress of a kind. But some things hadn't changed at all. They passed Williston Industrial High School and Jordan leaned forward in his seat. The building was still there, but barely. Windows broken, boarded up, brick facade crumbling, graffiti tagged across walls that once held the pride of Wilmington's black community. The school had been closed for over 20 years, left to rot like the promises of integration that had killed it. "Stop the car," Jordan said suddenly. The driver hesitated. Kohler started to object. Jordan's hand was already on the door handle. He stood on the cracked sidewalk, staring at the ruins. This had been the school where black teachers taught black history, where black coaches built championship teams, where excellence was expected and celebrated. Then the white schools had integrated, absorbed the students, fired the teachers, demolished the legacy. Ahmed joined him on the sidewalk. "You okay, man?" "My brothers went here," Jordan said. "Before they closed it, before they scattered everyone to white schools and pretended that was progress." A horn honked, not angry, celebratory. A car had stopped in the middle of the street and a young black woman was leaning out the window, phone in hand. "Oh my God, that's Michael Jordan, that's really him." Within seconds, cars were stopping, doors opening, people materializing from houses, from yards, from nowhere. A crowd formed like a wave, surging toward him with joy and disbelief. "Mr. Jordan, can I get a picture?" "Michael, my son plays basketball because of you." "Sign my shirt, please just sign my shirt." Jordan looked at Kohler, who was already radioing the second vehicle for backup, but Jordan waved him off. "It's fine. These are my people." For 20 minutes he stood in the July heat, signing autographs, taking pictures, shaking hands, hugging strangers who felt like family. Teenage boys showed him their crossover moves on the cracked sidewalk. Little girls in pigtails told him they wanted to be just like Mike when they grew up. An elderly woman kissed his cheek and told him his grandmother would be proud. Through it all, Jordan smiled. Real smiles, not the careful ones he wore for corporate appearances. These were his people. They cheered for him when he was nobody, when he was just a skinny kid who got cut from varsity. They'd never stopped believing. Across the street, sitting on a weathered porch in a rocking chair, an old man watched the commotion without moving. He was thin as paper, skin like worn leather, eyes that had seen too much. He simply nodded once at Jordan, a gesture of recognition and respect. When the crowd finally dispersed, urged along by Kohler's increasingly nervous pleas about the schedule, Jordan climbed back into the SUV. He was sweating through his shirt, his hand cramped from signing, his face sore from smiling. "Who was that old man?" he asked. "On the porch across the street." The driver, a local hire named Marcus from the car service, glanced in the rearview mirror. "That's Mr. Tobias Freeman. He's gotta be close to 100 years old now. Lives alone in that house, been there forever." "Why didn't he come over?" "Mr. Freeman don't move too quick these days," Marcus said. "But everybody knows his story. He was at the Cress building sit-in back in 1960. You know about that." Jordan shook his head. "Black folks tried to get served at the lunch counter downtown," Marcus explained. "Peaceful protest like Dr. King taught. Mr. Freeman was maybe 30 years old then, strong as an ox. Police beat him so bad he spent 3 weeks in the hospital. Cracked his skull. He ain't been quite right since, but he never regretted it. Says it was worth it so folks like you could walk anywhere you want." Jordan turned to look back, but the porch was already out of sight. "I want to meet him," Jordan said. "Tomorrow before the game. Can you arrange that?" "Yes, sir, Mr. Jordan." They drove through the historically black neighborhoods, 4th Street, 8th Street, areas where poverty and pride coexisted in uneasy balance. Kids played basketball on outdoor courts with bent rims and nets made of chain. Young men in undershirts sat on stoops in the heat. Women fanned themselves on porches, watching the convoy pass with knowing eyes. Jordan saw himself in every face, saw who he could have been without basketball, without his father's discipline, without the genetic gift of height and coordination. The difference between him and them was luck as much as work, and he knew it. "This is why we're doing this," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "The community center, the game, all of it. These folks need to know that one of their own made it, that it's possible." Fred Whitfield, sitting in the third row of the SUV, looked up from his notes. "You think a community center solves everything?" "No," Jordan said, "but it's something, it's more than nothing." They turned onto Market Street, heading toward the riverfront where old Wilmington met new money. The houses got bigger, the lawns greener, the faces whiter. Historic mansions with plaques bragging about their Civil War heritage. Buildings that had stood for over a century, preserved and protected, unlike Williston High School left to crumble. Ahead, the Greystone Inn rose into view. 3 stories of antebellum architecture, white columns and black shutters, magnolia trees framing the entrance. A historical marker stood near the curb, built 1906, restored 1987, a Wilmington landmark. The SUV pulled under the covered entrance. A valet in a burgundy vest hurried forward. Jordan looked up at the building, at its genteel southern charm, its carefully preserved history. Something about it made him uneasy, though he couldn't say why. Maybe it was the pristine perfection of it, the way it seemed to exist outside of time, untouched by the struggles of the neighborhoods they'd just driven through. "Nice place," Ahmed said, gathering his bag. "Yeah," Jordan said, still staring at the building. "Real nice." Kohler was already out, coordinating with the valet, checking his watch, reviewing the reservation details. Estella Dunn climbed out of the second vehicle, camera bag over her shoulder, already composing the scene in her journalist's mind. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the hotel's facade. In the golden light, the Greystone Inn looked like something from a postcard, a promise of southern hospitality and gracious living. Jordan grabbed his bag and stepped out of the SUV. He had no idea that in 20 minutes everything would change. He had no idea that this beautiful building held ugliness beneath its restored elegance. He had no idea that the weight of history, real history, not the sanitized version on commemorative plaques, was about to come crashing down on him in the most personal, humiliating way possible. The automatic doors opened with a quiet whoosh, and Michael Jordan walked into the Greystone Inn's lobby for the first time. And the last. The lobby of the Greystone Inn smelled like furniture polish and old money. Marble floors stretched beneath crystal chandeliers that cast warm light across walls decorated with oil paintings, Confederate generals on horseback, plantation scenes with absent slaves, romanticized visions of a South that never truly existed. Antique furniture clustered in conversation areas. A grand staircase swept upward, its banister gleaming. Jordan took it all in, the luxury, the history, the careful preservation of something. But what exactly? George Kohler was already at the front desk, briefcase open, confirmation papers in hand. The clerk was a middle-aged white woman with careful makeup and a practiced smile. Her name tag read Dorothy Palmer. "Good evening," Kohler said with professional cheerfulness. "Checking in. Reservation under George Kohler. 5 rooms for 2 nights." Dorothy's fingers moved across the keyboard, her smile unwavering. Click, click, click. Then a pause, a small frown. "I'm showing a reservation for George Kohler, but only for 2 rooms." "No, definitely 5, Kohler said, pulling out the confirmation email. "I booked them 3 weeks ago. Here's the confirmation number." Dorothy studied the paper, then her screen. The frown deepened. "I apologize, Mr. Kohler, but I'm only showing 2 rooms in our system, and I'm afraid we're completely booked tonight." "That's impossible," Kohler said, his voice rising slightly. "I called to confirm these reservations yesterday. Someone from this hotel assured me everything was set." Jordan hung back by the entrance with Ahmed and Fred, letting Kohler handle it. This was what assistants did: manage the details, solve the problems. He'd learned not to involve himself in every minor issue. Famous people who played concierge for themselves ended up exhausted, but something felt wrong. He noticed the other guests in the lobby, 8 or 9 of them, all white, all staring. Not the excited staring of fans recognizing a celebrity. Something else, something colder. A white man in his 40s wearing a polo shirt and khakis whispered something to his wife. She glanced at Jordan, then quickly looked away. Dorothy was typing again, shaking her head. "I'm terribly sorry, but there must have been an error in our reservation system. I only have record of 2 rooms." "Then get your manager," Kohler said, no longer polite, "because this is unacceptable." Dorothy picked up the phone, spoke quietly, hung up. "Mr. Sutherland will be right out." Estella Dunn had moved closer, her journalist instincts activated. She stood near a potted plant, notepad already in her hand, observing. Richard Sutherland emerged from an office behind the desk, 60-something, steel-gray hair, bow tie, the kind of man who perfected the art of looking dignified while saying nothing at all. His eyes swept the lobby, landed on Jordan's group, and something flickered across his face. "Good evening, gentlemen. I understand there's a problem with your reservation." "Not a problem," Kohler said tightly. "An error on your end. I have confirmation for 5 rooms." Sutherland took the paper, studied it with theatrical thoroughness. "I see. Well, Mr. Kohler, it appears there was indeed a miscommunication. However, our system shows only 2 rooms were actually confirmed, and unfortunately, we're at full capacity tonight." "You're telling me a hotel this size doesn't have 3 more rooms?" "I'm telling you we're fully booked," Sutherland repeated, his southern accent thick as syrup. "I apologize for the inconvenience." That's when Ahmed Rashid stepped forward and Jordan followed. Sutherland's eyes met Jordan's for the first time, and Jordan saw it, the recognition, followed not by excitement or respect, but by something that made his stomach tighten. "Perhaps," Sutherland said, his voice cooling, "you should try the Holiday Inn by the highway. They often have availability." "We don't want the Holiday Inn," Kohler said. "We want the rooms we reserved here." Sutherland set the confirmation paper on the desk. "I'm afraid that's impossible. Mrs. Palmer, would you please call Mr. Richardson?" The lobby had gone completely quiet. The other guests weren't even pretending not to stare anymore. An elderly white woman in a floral dress clutched her purse closer to her chest. Harold Richardson emerged from the same back office, moving slowly, deliberately. He was in his 70s, wearing a seersucker suit despite the hour, his face lined with age and something harder. He looked at Jordan's group the way someone might look at a stain on expensive carpet. "Gentlemen," Richardson said, not offering his hand, "I'm the owner of the Greystone Inn. I understand we have a situation." "Not a situation," Fred Whitfield said, speaking for the first time. His corporate voice was perfectly calibrated, professional, educated, undeniably articulate. "An error that needs correcting. We have a confirmed reservation for 5 rooms." Richardson picked up the paper, glanced at it, set it down without really reading it. "I've reviewed our records. We show 2 rooms confirmed. The others were never finalized." "That's a lie," Kohler said flatly. Richardson's jaw tightened. "I don't appreciate that language, sir. Now, as I was telling Mr. Sutherland, the rooms we do have available are in our original wing, quite small, preserved for historical authenticity. We typically don't accommodate large parties in that section." "What does that mean exactly?" Ahmed asked. "It means," Richardson said, finally looking directly at Jordan, "that the accommodations might not meet your group's expectations." The word hung in the air like smoke. Expectations, not needs, not standards, expectations. Jordan felt something cold settle in his chest. He knew this dance. He'd seen it before in smaller ways, in subtler moments. The way certain restaurants suddenly had no tables available. The way some stores watched him a little too closely. The way people assumed things about him before he opened his mouth. But this was different. This was blatant. This was 1991, and he was Michael Jordan, championship ring on his finger, face on every magazine cover, the most famous athlete in America, and this man was looking at him like he was a problem to be managed. "Do you know who I am?" Jordan asked quietly. It wasn't arrogance. It was genuine confusion. Because surely this was a misunderstanding. Surely once Richardson understood, once he recognized. "I'm aware," Richardson said, his voice ice. "And I'm telling you that we cannot accommodate your entire party tonight. The rooms we have available are limited. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at an establishment better suited to your needs." The words were coded, careful, legally defensible. But everyone in that lobby knew what he was really saying. Fred Whitfield stepped forward. "Are you refusing to honor a confirmed reservation?" "I'm saying the reservation was never properly confirmed," Richardson replied. "And our available accommodations wouldn't be appropriate." "Appropriate for what?" Estella Dunn's voice cut through from her position by the plant. Her hand was moving across her notepad now, recording everything. Richardson finally acknowledged her. "Who are you?" "A journalist," she said. "Charlotte Observer. And I'm watching you refuse service to Michael Jordan. You want to tell me why these rooms aren't appropriate?" The lobby temperature seemed to drop. Sutherland and Richardson exchanged glances. The other guests were completely still, watching the scene unfold like it was theater. An elderly white woman near the staircase spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Well, I never. This used to be a respectable establishment." Jordan's hands clenched at his sides. Ahmed put a hand on his shoulder, not restraining, just present. George Kohler's face was red with rage. "This is illegal. This is blatant discrimination under the Civil Rights Act. I'm calling." "You're not calling anyone," Jordan said quietly. His voice was controlled, but something beneath it was fracturing. "We're leaving." "Mike," Ahmed started. "We're leaving," Jordan repeated. He turned toward the door, and that's when Richardson called out, "Mr. Jordan." Jordan stopped, didn't turn around. Every person in the lobby held their breath. "I hope you understand this isn't personal. It's simply how we do things here. It's our tradition." Tradition. The word echoed off the marble floors, bounced off the crystal chandeliers, settled into the oil paintings of Confederate generals. Tradition. Jordan's shoulders rose and fell with a single deep breath. His hand, the one that had hit the championship-winning shot, that had held the Larry O'Brien trophy just weeks ago, that wore a ring declaring him the best in the world, trembled slightly. He could turn around. He could unleash everything he was feeling. He could make a scene that would destroy this place, this man, this moment of humiliation. Or he could walk away with whatever dignity he could salvage. The entire lobby waited. The chandelier light caught his championship ring, made it sparkle like a promise that had just been broken. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player alive, stood in the lobby of the Greystone Inn and made a choice. Jordan walked out without saying a word. His silence was louder than any outburst could have been. He pushed through the brass-handled doors into the thick July night, leaving his entourage scrambling to follow. The valet, confused by their abrupt exit, fumbled with keys. "Just give them to me," Kohler snapped, snatching the keys and pointing the group toward the vehicles. Jordan climbed into the back seat of the lead SUV and closed the door. Ahmed slid in beside him. Kohler took the driver's seat. The engine started and they pulled away from the Greystone Inn's pristine facade, leaving Estella, Fred, and the others to follow in the second vehicle. For 5 full minutes, nobody spoke. The silence was suffocating. Jordan stared out the window at Wilmington passing by, his hometown, his childhood, the place that had shaped him. Street lights cast orange pools on empty sidewalks. A few cars passed. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the most famous athlete in America was driving past them, drowning in humiliation. Ahmed finally broke the silence. "Mike, you want to talk about it?" "What's there to talk about?" Jordan's voice was flat dead. "This is America, my hometown America." Kohler's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "We should go back. We should call the police, call lawyers, call." "And say what?" Jordan interrupted. "That they hurt my feelings, that they made me feel small. You think there's a law against that?" "There's a law against discrimination," Kohler said. "The Civil Rights Act of 1964. They can't refuse service based on race. That's exactly what just happened." "They didn't refuse service," Jordan said bitterly. "They said there was a reservation error. They said the rooms weren't appropriate. They never said the actual words. They're too smart for that." His mind was racing, pulling up memories he'd spent years trying to bury. 10th grade playing basketball in a summer league. A white player from Jacksonville checking him hard, whispering that word, the one that burned in his ear after every foul. Jordan had scored 38 points that game, let his performance do the talking. His father had taught him, excellence is the best revenge. Freshman year at UNC, walking across campus with his backpack, campus security stopping him, asking to see his student ID. "Just making sure you belong here, son." Like he couldn't possibly be a student, like his presence needed justification. Rookie year in Chicago, a white woman in an elevator clutching her purse when he entered, moving to the opposite corner. He tried to make a joke, "Don't worry, I'm not a mugger, just a basketball player," but her face had shown genuine fear. Of him. 6'6" of pure athletic ability, and she saw only a threat. The commercial meetings where white executives explained his brand image, where they told him to be palatable, non-threatening, universal, where they carefully suggested he avoid being too political or too urban, where the unspoken message was clear: be black enough to be exciting but not so black that white people feel uncomfortable. He'd swallowed it all. Every microaggression, every subtle slight, every moment of being made to prove he belonged. He'd swallowed it because speaking up meant being labeled difficult or angry or ungrateful. Because the path to success for a black man in America meant making white people comfortable while being exceptional enough that they couldn't ignore you. And tonight, in that lobby, with his championship ring and his global fame and his multi-million-dollar endorsements, he'd learned it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "I thought if I was good enough," Jordan said quietly, more to himself than to his companions, excellent enough, perfect enough. "I thought I could transcend it. I thought money and fame were armor." He looked down at his championship ring, twisted it on his finger. "But they saw me walk into that lobby, 6'6", black and successful, and all they saw was a threat. All the championships in the world couldn't change what they saw when they looked at me." Ahmed's voice was gentle. "You're not alone in this, man. Every one of us has a story like that. Different details, same hurt. That doesn't make it better." "No, but it means you don't carry it alone." Kohler turned onto Highway 17, heading toward the generic cluster of chain hotels near the interstate. The Holiday Inn sign glowed in the distance, bland, corporate, safe. Everything the Greystone Inn wasn't. "I should have said something," Jordan said suddenly. "I should have turned around and told that old man exactly what I thought of him and his tradition." "You did the right thing," Ahmed said. "Did I? Because it feels like I did what I always do, swallowed it, walked away, protected everyone's comfort except my own." They pulled into the Holiday Inn parking lot. The building was utilitarian, nothing historic or elegant about it. Just clean rooms and reliable service, and the kind of corporate consistency that didn't care what color you were as long as your credit card cleared. The clerk at the front desk was a young black woman, maybe 25, working the evening shift. She looked up as they entered and her eyes went wide. "Oh my, is that?" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Michael Jordan," Kohler said, stepping forward. "We need rooms, 5 of them, whatever you have available." Yes, of course." The young woman's hands shook as she typed. Her name tag read Tanya. "I can't believe my nephews are huge fans. My son plays basketball because of you, Mr. Jordan. He's only 8, but he practices every day. He wants to be just like you." She kept talking as she processed their information, her excitement bubbling over. She upgraded them to suites without being asked, comped their breakfast, asked shyly if Jordan would mind signing an autograph for her son. "What's his name?" Jordan asked, his voice softening slightly. Darnell Washington. He's gonna die when I tell him you stayed here." Jordan signed the paper she offered to Darnell, "Keep working, stay excellent, Michael Jordan," and watched her eyes fill with tears of gratitude. "You have no idea what this means," Tanya said. "What you mean, to us, to kids like my son who need to see someone who looks like them succeed." After they got their keys and headed to the elevator, Ahmed said quietly, "That's why it matters, Mike. What happened tonight was wrong. But what you represent to that woman, to her son, that's real too." Jordan pressed the elevator button. "Doesn't make it hurt less." "No," Ahmed agreed, "it doesn't." In his room, clean and anonymous, with generic art on the walls and a view of the parking lot, Jordan sat on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed. He pulled out his phone and dialed his mother. She answered on the second ring. "Baby, how's the hotel?" And that's when Michael Jordan, who never cried, who'd built his legend on stoicism and mental toughness and refusing to show weakness, felt his throat tighten. "Mama," he said, "you were right." The silence on the other end told him she understood immediately. "Oh, Michael, what happened?" He told her everything. The lobby, the excuses, the thinly veiled discrimination, the humiliation in front of strangers. When he finished, his mother was quiet for a long moment. "Your father," she finally said, "he had something similar happen. 1970, downtown lunch counter. I never told you because he made me promise not to." Jordan sat up straighter. "What?" Dolores Jordan told him the story. His father in his work suit, his supervisor badge, his money in his pocket. None of it mattering, being called an animal, being threatened, having to leave or face arrest. "James never told you boys because he didn't want you to grow up afraid or angry. He wanted you to believe things had changed enough. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe they change slower than we hope." Jordan looked at his reflection in the dark television screen. Championship ring on his finger, face that had sold millions of dollars in merchandise, body that had just carried his team to glory, and still not enough. "I'm not canceling the game," he said. "I didn't think you would. If anything, this makes it more important." "I know, baby, I know." After they hung up, Jordan lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. A text from Estella, "Can we talk tomorrow morning? This story needs to be told." He didn't respond, not yet, because responding meant making a decision, stay silent or speak out, protect himself or risk everything. The weight of that choice pressed down on him heavier than any fourth-quarter pressure he'd ever faced on the court. Outside his window, Wilmington slept. The Greystone Inn stood pristine in the darkness, its ugly history hidden beneath fresh paint and careful preservation. And Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player alive, lay awake in a Holiday Inn, learning that some battles couldn't be won with a perfect jump shot. Jordan's phone buzzed at 5:47 a.m. He hadn't slept. The sky outside was turning from black to gray, dawn creeping across Wilmington like something reluctant. Jordan sat in the chair by the window, still wearing yesterday's clothes, watching the parking lot fill with early morning light. The phone buzzed again. His mother, he answered. "Michael, you awake?" "Yeah, Mama." I couldn't sleep either. Her voice was heavy with something beyond exhaustion. "Baby, I need to tell you something else. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Jordan waited. In 1970, when you were 7, your father was refused service at a lunch counter downtown. The owner called him, she stopped, couldn't say it, called him terrible things. Your father was wearing his work suit. He had money. He was respectful. None of it mattered. Jordan closed his eyes. James never told you boys because he didn't want you growing up afraid or angry. He thought if he just kept his head down, worked hard, raised you right, things would be different for you. Better. "They're not different," Jordan said quietly. "No, baby, they're different, just not different enough." She paused. "Your father spent his whole life trying to make sure you boys could walk anywhere with your heads up. He thought times had changed enough that his sons wouldn't have to swallow what he swallowed. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe they change slower than we hope." After they hung up, Jordan showered, letting the hot water run until the Holiday Inn's tank ran lukewarm. He dressed in fresh clothes, jeans, a simple white t-shirt, Bull's cap pulled low. In the mirror, he looked like any other man, but he wasn't any other man. He couldn't be. That was the trap, the prison of exceptionalism. The knock came at 6:30 a.m. Estella Dunn stood in the hallway, 2 coffees in hand, her notepad tucked under her arm. "Figured you'd be awake," she said. Jordan let her in. They sat at the small table by the window, the sunrise painting everything gold. "I've been making calls," Estella said, pulling out her notepad. "The Greystone Inn has history, Michael. The kind they don't put on historical plaques." She laid out what she'd learned through hours of phone calls to sources, digging through newspaper archives, talking to people who remembered. In the 1960s, the Greystone, then called the Patterson Hotel, was whites only, not just in practice but in policy posted on the wall. In 1987, when it was renovated and renamed, the owner Harold Richardson gave an interview to the local paper. He talked about preserving Southern heritage and maintaining standards of excellence. Coded language. 3 years ago, a black family passing through had tried to check in. They were told no rooms were available. 10 minutes later, a white family walked in and was immediately given a room. The black family filed a complaint with the NAACP, but nothing came of it. No proof, just their word against the hotel's records. Richardson had connections to local political groups, not officially hate groups, but organizations that opposed removing Confederate monuments, that spoke about heritage, not hate, that donated to candidates who used phrases like law and order and traditional values. "He knew exactly who you were last night," Estella said, "and that's precisely why he turned you away." Jordan stared at his coffee. "You want to write this story?" "I need to write this story. Not just for you, for everyone who thinks we're past this. For every person who believes that success and excellence mean acceptance." "If you write it, I become the race guy," Jordan said. "I become the athlete who complains about racism instead of just playing basketball. You know what happens then? Half my fans turn on me. My endorsements get complicated. I become controversial instead of universal." "You're already controversial to the people who hate you for being successful while black," Estella said gently. "You just haven't acknowledged it publicly yet." Jordan stood, walked to the window. In the parking lot below, early morning workers were heading to their cars, regular people with regular problems. "My whole career," he said, "I've been told to stay neutral. Republicans buy sneakers too. Don't alienate half the country. Be excellent, be gracious, be quiet about everything else. And I listened because I thought basketball was enough. I thought being the best was enough." He turned to face her. "Last night taught me it's not. I can be the greatest player who ever lived, and someone will still see me walk into a hotel lobby and decide I don't belong. So what do you want to do? Estella asked. Jordan sat back down, looked at his hands, the hands that held championships, that signed multi-million-dollar contracts, that couldn't get him a room at a hotel in his home state. I don't want to be the race guy, he said honestly. But I'm starting to realize I don't get to choose. Every time a black kid puts on a Bulls jersey, I'm already the race guy. Every time their parents work double shifts to afford those shoes I advertise, I'm already the race guy. The question isn't whether I want this platform, it's whether I'll use it. Estella waited, pen poised above paper. Tell the story, Jordan said finally, but I want to do it right. I'm not just complaining about hurt feelings. I'm making a point about something bigger. What point? Jordan thought about Marcus Webb, the 11-year-old from Chicago who'd watched the championship parade on his father's shoulders. Thought about Tanya's son Darnell, 8 years old, practicing basketball every day because he wanted to be like Mike. Thought about all the kids who saw him as proof that anything was possible. That excellence isn't armor, Jordan said. That we have to build a world where it doesn't need to be. Estella smiled. That's a hell of a point. There's something else I need to do first, Jordan said. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts. You said there's a 95-year-old man who got his skull cracked fighting for civil rights. Mr. Tobias Freeman, lives on 5th Street. I want to meet him today before the game. I can arrange that. And I want to talk to him on the record. I want people to know that what happened to me last night connects to what happened to him in 1960. That this isn't new. That this is the same fight, just wearing different clothes. Estella was writing now fast. You're sure about this? Once this story breaks, you can't take it back. You'll be taking a stand whether you want to or not. Jordan thought about his father at the lunch counter in 1970, swallowing humiliation to protect his sons from fear. Thought about Mr. Freeman taking a beating so Jordan could have opportunities. Thought about the choice between comfortable silence and uncomfortable truth. I'm sure, he said. Write it. After Estella left, Jordan sat alone with his thoughts. His phone buzzed with texts from his teammates, Scotty checking in, Horace asking if everything was okay, BJ wondering about practice schedules. Normal life, continuing like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Michael Jordan had spent 28 years learning to be excellent. He'd spent the last 12 hours learning that excellence has limits. That there are some doors it can't open, some minds it can't change, some hatred it can't overcome. But maybe, just maybe, speaking truth could do what jump shots couldn't. He looked at his championship ring one more time, then slipped it off his finger and into his pocket. Today wasn't about being a champion. Today was about being human. The empty lot sat on the corner of 5th and Dawson, surrounded by a chain-link fence. Weeds pushed through cracked concrete. Broken glass glittered in the morning sun. A faded billboard advertised a business that had closed 5 years ago. But in Jordan's mind, he could see what it would become. A community center with basketball courts, a computer lab, a tutoring room, a safe place where kids could go after school instead of onto streets where opportunities were limited and dangers were real. By 10 a.m., word had spread that Michael Jordan was coming. Hundreds of people lined the fence, families, volunteers, children in Bulls jerseys, elderly residents who'd lived in this neighborhood their entire lives. News cameras jostled for position. Local politicians suddenly appeared, sensing a photo opportunity. Jordan arrived with his mother beside him in the SUV. Dolores wore a simple blue dress and carried herself with the quiet dignity of a woman who'd raised 5 children on faith and determination. When she stepped out of the vehicle, the crowd erupted. That's Michael's mama. Mrs. Jordan, we love you. She waved, smiled, but Jordan could see the tension in her shoulders. She was worried about him, about what happened last night, about what might happen today. At the center of the crowd stood a man Jordan hadn't seen before, tall, thin, with silver hair and a face that spoke of decades lived in service. He wore a simple black suit despite the heat, a white collar at his throat. Pastor Jeremiah Stone. Jordan recognized authority when he saw it. This was a man people listened to. Pastor Stone approached, hand extended. His grip was firm despite his age, 68 years carried with the strength of someone who'd survived things that would have broken weaker men. Scars traced across his scalp, visible where his hair had thinned. Souvenirs from Birmingham, 1963. "Mr. Jordan," Pastor Stone said, "thank you for coming home." "Thank you for organizing this," Jordan replied. "The thanks belong to you. You didn't have to come back. You're rich, you're famous, you could be anywhere, but you're here." They walked together to a makeshift stage, really just a flatbed truck bed with plywood laid across it. The crowd pressed closer. Children climbed the fence for a better view. Parents lifted babies onto shoulders. Pastor Stone took the microphone first. His voice was deep, resonant, filled with the cadence of 1,000 sermons. "Brothers and sisters, we are gathered here today to celebrate possibility, to break ground, not just of this empty lot, but of limited thinking. For too long, we've been told what we can't do, where we don't belong, how high we're not allowed to reach." The crowd murmured agreement. But this young man standing beside me is living proof that excellence cannot be denied. That when you work hard enough, when you refuse to accept other people's limitations, you can achieve anything. Jordan shifted uncomfortably. After last night, the words felt hollow. Pastor Stone continued, "Now, I know some of y'all heard about what happened last night, about how Michael was treated at that hotel downtown." The crowd went silent. So word had already spread. In a community this tight, gossip traveled faster than news. Some folks think that because Michael's rich and famous, he should just be quiet about it. Take the insult, move on, don't make waves. Pastor Stone's voice rose. "But I'm here to tell you that the hatred of small men cannot diminish the light of the excellent." The crowd erupted, shouting, clapping, voices lifted in agreement. Michael Jordan could have stayed in Chicago, could have sent a check and called it charity, but he came home. He came back to the streets that made him. And last night, he was reminded that even greatness don't make you free in some folks' eyes. Pastor Stone turned to Jordan. "But here's what I know about this young man. I know that pain don't stop him. I know that disrespect don't defeat him. I know that every time someone told him he wasn't good enough, he worked harder. Every time someone tried to make him small, he became greater." He handed the microphone to Jordan. The crowd waited, cameras focused. This moment would be recorded, remembered, dissected. Jordan looked out at the faces, young and old, hopeful and hurting, looking to him for something more than basketball. He thought about what Estella had said. "You don't get to choose. You're already the race guy." "I came home to give back," Jordan began, his voice steady. "To help build something that lasts longer than a basketball game. This community center, it's not just about having a place to shoot hoops. It's about having a place where our kids feel valued, where they're expected to be excellent, where they never doubt their worth." A little girl's voice cut through the crowd. "Mr. Jordan." Jordan shaded his eyes, searching. "Yes." A mother pushed forward, a 10-year-old girl in front of her. The child wore a faded Bulls jersey 3 sizes too big, her hair in careful braids, her eyes wide with the kind of courage that comes from desperation to know the truth. "Can she ask you something?" the mother said. "Of course." The girl's name was Keisha Johnson. Her voice was small but clear. "Mr. Jordan, when people are mean to you because of your color, how do you keep going?" The question landed like a physical blow. Jordan felt every eye on him, every camera recording, every person waiting for his answer. This child had asked the question that mattered, the one that couldn't be answered with platitudes or corporate-approved sound bites. Jordan knelt down to her eye level, the crowd pressing closer to hear. "I want to tell you it doesn't hurt," he said softly. "But it does. Every time. Last night hurt. Being treated like I didn't belong in my own hometown. That hurt real bad." Keisha nodded, understanding in her young eyes. "But here's what I know," Jordan continued. "We don't let the hurt stop us, we use it. We prove them wrong not by fighting them, but by being so good they can't ignore us. You understand? You be so excellent, so kind, so strong, that their hate looks small next to your greatness." He stood, still holding her gaze. "Can you do that?" "Yes, sir," Keisha said. "Then you're already stronger than the people who tried to make me feel small last night." The crowd erupted again, but Jordan wasn't playing to them anymore. He was talking to this one child, and through her, to every child who'd ever been made to feel less than. He pulled off his bull's cap and placed it on her head. It swallowed her small frame, but she beamed like he'd given her a crown. "You keep that," Jordan said. "And when you wear it, remember, you belong everywhere excellence lives." Cameras flashed. Jordan knew that image would be everywhere by evening. Michael Jordan kneeling before a child, passing down something more important than basketball. Pastor Stone reclaimed the microphone. "This is what it means to come home, not just in body but in spirit." Michael Jordan could have stayed silent about what happened, could have protected his brand, his endorsements, his comfortable place in America, but he chose truth over comfort. He chose to use his pain to illuminate injustice. The pastor's voice dropped to something quieter, more intimate. "And that, brothers and sisters, is leadership." After the ceremony, as volunteers began marking the lot for construction, Jordan spotted an old man in a wheelchair at the edge of the crowd. He was rail-thin, skin like weathered paper, but his eyes were alert, taking everything in. Mr. Tobias Freeman. Jordan walked over, his mother beside him. They stood before the man who'd bled so they could breathe easier. "Mr. Freeman," Jordan said, "I'm Michael Jordan." The old man's voice was surprisingly strong. "I know who you are, son. Watched you since UNC. Got that shot against Georgetown on tape. Watch it sometimes when my bones hurt too much to sleep. Sir, my mother told me what you did. The lunch counter in 1960. What they did to you." Mr. Freeman waved a gnarled hand. "Ancient history." "No, sir," Jordan said firmly. "It's not ancient, it's yesterday, it's last night, it's right now." The old man studied him. "They turned you away somewhere." "It wasn't a question." "Yes, sir, the Greystone Inn. Told me the rooms weren't appropriate." Mr. Freeman nodded slowly. "Same building was the Patterson Hotel in my day. Wouldn't let me use the bathroom there in 1959. I was working construction downtown, needed to use the facilities. They told me to go find a tree." He looked up at Jordan. "You gonna do something about what happened to you?" "I'm going to tell the truth about it." "Good, because staying silent protects them, not us." Mr. Freeman reached out a shaking hand. "You got a platform I never had. Use it, even if it costs you." Jordan held the old man's hand gently. "It might cost me a lot." "Freedom always costs. Question is whether you're willing to pay." Jordan made a decision. He gestured to Estella, who'd been documenting everything. "Can you get this on camera?" He turned back to Mr. Freeman, still holding his hand, and spoke loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Sir, I want everyone here to know your story. To know that what happened to me last night is connected to what happened to you. That this fight didn't start with me, and it won't end with me. But maybe if we tell the truth together, it gets a little easier for the next person." Tears ran down Mr. Freeman's weathered cheeks. "You're a good man, Michael Jordan. Better than a good basketball player, a good man." Jordan pulled out his checkbook, wrote quickly, tore out the check. $10,000. He pressed it into Mr. Freeman's hand along with a signed jersey. "This doesn't repay what you sacrificed," Jordan said, "but I want you to know it mattered. You mattered." The crowd had gone completely silent, watching this moment of connection between generations, between the man who'd fought for basic dignity and the man who'd achieved excellence but found it wasn't enough. Pastor Stone approached with the microphone. "Mr. Jordan, would you like to say anything else before we close?" Jordan took the microphone, looked out at the community that had shaped him, and spoke from a place deeper than prepared remarks. "We don't forget," he said simply. "We honor, and we keep fighting, not with fists but with excellence, not with hate but with truth. We build this community center, we raise our kids to be proud, and we refuse to let anyone make us feel like we don't belong." The crowd rose as one, standing, shouting, crying, celebrating, not because of basketball, because of truth. As Jordan walked back to the SUV, Keisha Johnson ran up, still wearing his cap. "Mr. Jordan, thank you." He knelt down one more time. "No, sweetheart, thank you for asking the real question, for being brave enough to want the truth." "I'm gonna be excellent," she said, "just like you said." "I know you will." In the SUV, driving away from the lot toward Laney High School where tonight's game would be held, Dolores squeezed her son's hand. "Your father would be proud," she said. "You think so?" "I know so. You did what he couldn't. You spoke up." Jordan looked out the window at his hometown rolling past. "Mama, I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of what happens next. Of losing everything I've built because I told the truth." Dolores Jordan, who'd raised 5 children through poverty and prejudice, who taught them dignity and determination, looked at her son, her baby, her champion, and spoke with absolute certainty. "Baby, you can't lose what really matters. Your character, your truth, your soul, nobody can take those. Everything else is just noise." Jordan nodded, but the fear remained. Because in 7 hours he'd step onto a basketball court in front of the people who'd known him longest. And after tonight, after Estella's story broke, the whole world would know he'd taken a stand. There would be no going back. Laney High School's gymnasium smelled exactly like Jordan remembered: sweat, floor wax, and teenage ambition. The building was the same one where he'd been cut from varsity as a sophomore, where he'd cried in his mother's arms, where Pop Herring had pulled him aside and said 5 words that changed everything. "Use it. Prove them wrong." Now at 6:30 p.m., the gym was packed beyond any reasonable capacity. Fire marshals had threatened to shut it down, but Mayor Pro Tem Harper Williams, a black city councilman who'd grown up 3 blocks from Jordan, had personally vouched that they'd keep it safe. Because turning away anyone who'd come to see Michael Jordan would have caused a different kind of riot. Every seat was filled. People lined the walls, sat in the aisles, crowded the doorways. The Wilmington kids from the morning ceremony sat in a special section behind the home bench, all wearing donated Bulls jerseys. Dolores Jordan sat with them, Mr. Tobias Freeman's wheelchair positioned right beside her in the front row. The old man looked exhausted but determined, his eyes sharp. The other NBA players had arrived, guys Jordan had invited personally. Not superstars, but solid pros who understood what this night meant. Ahmed Rashid would play. So would a couple of former UNC teammates, some local college coaches, even Pop Herring himself, who'd suit up for at least one ceremonial possession despite his 72 years. The visiting team was a mix of local high school coaches, former college players, and community leaders. They'd lose by 50, but that wasn't the point. The point was celebration, community, showing these kids that basketball was a tool for something larger than just basketball. Jordan sat in the locker room, lacing his shoes slowly, methodically. The ritual calmed him, left shoe first always, double knot, right shoe second, pull the tongue straight. These were the small ceremonies that made him feel in control when everything else was chaos. George Kohler stuck his head in. "Mike, there's some people here to see you. Tell them I'll sign autographs after." "Not fans, lawyers." Jordan's stomach dropped. "What?" 3 men in dark suits entered the cramped locker room, completely out of place among the metal lockers and worn benches. The lead attorney was young, maybe 30, with carefully styled hair and nervous hands. His name tag read Martin Keyes, Keyes and Associates. "Mr. Jordan," Keyes said, his voice apologetic. "I'm here on behalf of Harold Richardson and the Greystone Inn. Mr. Richardson wanted me to convey his deepest apologies for last night's misunderstanding." Jordan stood slowly, all 6'6" of him unfolding to full height. Ahmed and Fred Whitfield moved to flank him. The small locker room suddenly felt very crowded. "Misunderstanding," Jordan repeated flatly. "Yes. Mr. Richardson didn't realize who you were, and there was genuine confusion about the reservation. He wants to offer you and your entire party complimentary accommodations for the duration of your stay, plus." "He knew exactly who I was." Jordan's voice was quiet, controlled, lethal. "And the problem isn't that he didn't recognize me. The problem is what would have happened if I wasn't Michael Jordan, if I was just another black man looking for a room." Keyes pulled out a folder. "Mr. Richardson is prepared to make a substantial donation to your community center project. $25,000 as a gesture of—" "Stop," Jordan held up his hand. "You can leave now." "Mr. Jordan, please. Mr. Richardson is genuinely sorry. He's prepared to make this right." Ahmed stepped forward. "You heard him, leave." Keyes hesitated, looked at his colleagues, then back at Jordan. "If you refuse this settlement, if you pursue legal action or speak publicly about this incident, it could become very complicated, expensive, messy, for everyone involved." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Jordan felt Fred tense beside him. "Is that a threat?" Fred asked. "It's a statement of fact," Keyes said. "These situations can spiral. Allegations, counter-allegations. Mr. Richardson has resources and connections. It would be much simpler to accept the apology and the generous donation and—" "Get out." Jordan's voice didn't rise, but something in it made all 3 lawyers take a step back. "Tell Mr. Richardson I don't want his money. Tell him I don't want his apology. Tell him what I want is for him to look at all the people in that gym out there and understand what he represents. What he tried to do to me, he's been doing to people who don't have cameras and lawyers for decades. That ends now. Mr. Jordan." "Out now." The lawyers left, their expensive shoes squeaking on the old linoleum. Jordan sat back down, his hands shaking slightly. "That was bold," Fred said quietly. "Turning down that money." "That wasn't money," Jordan replied. "That was a bribe to shut up." Ahmed put a hand on Jordan's shoulder. "You don't have to do this here, Mike. You don't have to make a statement during the game. You can just play, give these folks a good show, deal with the other stuff later." Jordan looked up at his friend. "Where else would I do it? This is my home. These are my people. If I can't speak truth here, where can I speak it?" Through the door, they could hear the gym coming alive. Music playing, crowd chanting, the electric anticipation of seeing greatness up close. Jordan stood, adjusted his jersey, checked his shoes one more time. "Let's go play," he said. The moment Jordan emerged from the tunnel, the gymnasium exploded. The sound was physical, a wall of noise that hit him in the chest. 1,100 people, maybe more, packed dangerously tight, rose as one, screaming his name. "MVP, MVP, MVP." Jordan waved, soaking it in. This was different from NBA crowds. This was personal. These people had known him when he was nobody, when he was just Ronnie and Dolores's boy who could jump high. They'd believed in him before the world did. The game began with ceremony. Pop Herring, wearing sneakers for the first time in years, checked in for the opening tip. The crowd roared as Jordan and his 72-year-old coach stood side by side. Jordan won the tip, tapped it to Ahmed, who immediately passed it back. Jordan dribbled once, pulled up from 20 feet and swished it. The gym went absolutely insane. For the first quarter, Jordan played loose, happy, involving everyone. He threw alley-oops to Ahmed, set screens for former teammates, even let a local high school coach post him up for a joke. The score didn't matter. This was about joy, about community, about reminding everyone why they loved this game. But midway through the second quarter, something shifted. A player on the opposing team, a former college player named Kyle Brennan, white, 30-something, with a chip on his shoulder about playing against a celebrity, got physical. He checked Jordan hard on a drive, then as Jordan got up, Brennan said something too quiet for the crowd to hear. Jordan's entire body went rigid. Ahmed saw it, moved toward them. "We good?" Jordan didn't answer. He brought the ball up the next possession, isolated Brennan at the top of the key, and scored. Then again, then again. Suddenly this wasn't an exhibition anymore, it was personal. 3 straight possessions, Jordan scored on Brennan. The fourth time he crossed Brennan so violently the man nearly fell, then pulled up for a 3-pointer. Swish. Jordan stared at him the entire time. The crowd sensed the shift, began cheering louder, sensing something primal was happening. Pop Herring called timeout. In the huddle, he pulled Jordan aside. "What'd he say to you?" Jordan's jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. "Doesn't matter." "Michael, what'd he say?" "He said maybe that hotel was right. Maybe some places aren't meant for my kind." Pop Herring closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "Show him what your kind can do." The rest of the half was a masterclass in controlled fury. Jordan scored 22 points in 8 minutes. He dunked so ferociously on one possession that the rim shook, the backboard rattled, and the entire gym rose in a standing ovation that lasted a full minute. At halftime, Bulls 78, Community All-Stars 43. Jordan, 38 points on perfect shooting. In the locker room, Jordan sat with his head in his hands. Ahmed sat beside him, said nothing, just present. "I'm tired," Jordan said quietly. "I'm tired of proving myself. I'm tired of being excellent just to be treated like a human being. I'm so damn tired." "I know. Why isn't it enough? Why is being the best at what I do not enough to just exist without someone trying to make me feel small?" Ahmed had no answer. There was no answer. The second half was different. Jordan came out determined not to dominate but to elevate. He assisted on 8 straight baskets, setting up teammates for easy scores. He ran plays for the high school coaches on the opposing team, giving them moments they'd remember forever. He pulled a shy 15-year-old from the crowd, a kid who'd been watching wide-eyed all game, and brought him onto the court. "What's your name?" Jordan asked. "Tommy," the kid stammered. "Tommy Bradford." "You play basketball, Tommy?" "Yes, sir, guard. I'm not very good, though." Jordan handed him the ball. "Show me your best move." With the entire gym watching, Tommy dribbled nervously, attempted a crossover, nearly lost the ball. Jordan guarded him at half speed, then let Tommy blow past him for a layup. The kid missed. Jordan grabbed the rebound, handed it back. Again. Tommy tried again, missed again. Jordan rebounded, passed it back. One more time. The third time, Tommy made it. The gymnasium absolutely erupted, people screaming like Tommy had just won the championship. Jordan lifted the kid onto his shoulders, carried him around like a trophy. Tommy was crying, laughing, overwhelmed. "Don't forget this feeling," Jordan told him when he set him down. "Don't forget that you belong on this court as much as anyone. You understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Now get back to your seat before the fire marshal shuts us down." The game ended, Bulls 124, All-Stars 103. Jordan finished with 52 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds. Numbers that would have made headlines in an NBA game, but here they were secondary to the moment, the message, the meaning. After the final buzzer, Jordan took the microphone at center court. The gym was still packed, nobody leaving, everyone sensing he had something to say. "I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight," Jordan began. His voice echoed off the cinder block walls of this gym that had made him. "This community raised me, taught me, believed in me when I was just a skinny kid who couldn't make varsity." The crowd laughed, applauded. Jordan's tone shifted, became more serious. "Last night, something happened that I need to tell you about, because staying silent about it would make me complicit in something I can't accept." The gym went completely quiet. "Last night, my group tried to check into the Greystone Inn. We had confirmed reservations. We had everything we needed, but we were turned away, told the rooms weren't appropriate. Given excuses and coded language that all meant the same thing: we weren't welcome." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some people shook their heads like they'd expected this. Others looked shocked. Tonight, during halftime, lawyers came to the locker room. They offered me money to stay quiet, to accept an apology and move on, to not make this public. Jordan paused. "I refused." The crowd erupted, cheering, shouting support. Jordan raised his hand for quiet. "I refused because this isn't about me. It's about every person in this gym who's ever been made to feel less than. It's about Mr. Tobias Freeman, who got his skull cracked in 1960 fighting for the right to sit at a lunch counter. It's about my father, who was called an animal for wanting a cup of coffee. It's about every black family who's been told they don't belong somewhere because of how they look." He pointed to the section of kids in Bulls jerseys. "It's about these children who deserve to grow up in a world where excellence is celebrated, not feared, where success isn't threatening, where they don't have to be twice as good to be treated half as well." Jordan's voice rose with emotion. "This community center we're building, it's not just about basketball. It's about creating spaces where our kids feel valued, where they're expected to excel, where they never, ever doubt their worth." The crowd was on its feet now, many crying, all listening to every word. "I'm fortunate. I've been given gifts and opportunities. But last night reminded me, I'm not separate from this community. I'm not beyond the struggles. My success doesn't shield me from hatred, and I won't pretend it does." He looked directly at Mr. Tobias Freeman in the front row. The old man nodded once, tears streaming down his weathered face. "So to everyone watching, to everyone who thinks we're past this, who thinks racism is ancient history, we're not. It's here. It's now. It's yesterday in a hotel lobby, and it's 30 years ago at a lunch counter, and it's the same fight dressed in different clothes." Jordan's voice softened, became almost gentle. "But here's what I also know. We don't fight hate with hate. We fight it with truth, with excellence, with refusing to be diminished. We fight it by building community centers and telling our stories and refusing to stay silent when silence protects those who would harm us." He held up the championship ring he'd put back on for the game. "This ring says I'm the best at what I do, but it doesn't make me immune to racism. Nothing does. The difference is I have a platform, I have a voice, and I'm going to use it." The gymnasium shook with the force of the ovation. People were crying openly, hugging strangers, raising their fists in solidarity. This was more than a basketball game now. This was a moment. As Jordan walked off the court, Keisha Johnson, the 10-year-old from the morning, ran up to him, still wearing his Bulls cap. "Mr. Jordan, you were excellent, just like you said." He knelt down, hugged her. "So were you, sweetheart, just by being brave enough to ask hard questions." In the parking lot afterward, as Jordan signed autographs for the crowd that wouldn't disperse, Estella Dunn approached with her tape recorder. "That was quite a speech," she said. It needed to be said. My story runs tomorrow morning, front page. Are you ready for what comes next? Jordan looked back at the gym, at the people still celebrating inside, at the community that had shaped him. No, but I'm doing it anyway. One question for the record, Estella said. Do you regret speaking out, knowing it might cost you? Jordan thought about it, really thought about it. Thought about the endorsements that might disappear, the fans who'd burn his jersey, the complications that came with telling truth to power. Ask me in a year, he said finally. But right now, no. Right now I feel more free than I've felt in a long time. As they drove back to the Holiday Inn past the Greystone Inn with its perfect facade and ugly heart, Jordan's phone started ringing. His agent, Nike executives, Bulls management, everyone who'd heard what happened, who'd heard about his speech, who wanted to discuss the situation. Jordan turned off his phone. Tonight wasn't about managing his brand. Tonight was about reclaiming his humanity. Tomorrow the world would react. Tomorrow the consequences would begin. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight Michael Jordan had told the truth. And for the first time in his professional life, that felt like enough. Jordan's phone wouldn't stop vibrating on the nightstand. He turned off the ringer at midnight, but the silent buzzing continued like a heartbeat, relentless and insistent. At 6:15 a.m., he finally picked it up. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages. His voicemail was full. The first text was from his agent David Falk. Mike, call me immediately. This is urgent. The second was from Nike's Phil Knight. Saw the news. We need to talk. Not angry, just need to align. The third was from Scottie Pippen. Proud of you, man. Whatever happens, we got your back. Jordan scrolled through the rest. Teammates offering support. Executives requesting emergency calls. Reporters begging for interviews. And mixed in with all of it, numbers he didn't recognize with messages that made his stomach turn. You just lost a fan. Keep politics out of sports. Guess you prefer playing the race card to playing basketball. Thought you were different. Guess you're just another angry black man. He set the phone down, hands shaking slightly. The price of truth was already being tallied. Ahmed knocked and entered without waiting for an answer. He was holding newspapers, 3 of them, already wrinkled from being read multiple times. You're everywhere, Ahmed said, dropping them on the bed. The Charlotte Observer had run Estella's story above the fold. Jordan confronts racism in HOMETOWN. NBA champion refused hotel service, speaks out against discrimination. The article was comprehensive, devastating. Estella had laid out everything. The hotel encounter, the coded language, Richardson's history, the connection to Mr. Tobias Freeman, Jordan's speech at the game. She'd included quotes from eyewitnesses, legal experts on civil rights law, and a damning sidebar about the Greystone Inn's past. The New York Times had picked it up for their sports section. More than a game, Michael Jordan's stand against discrimination. Even USA Today led with it. Air Jordan grounded. Hotel incident sparks national conversation on racism and success. Jordan read silently, his coffee growing cold beside him. Seeing his humiliation in print made it real in a new way. The whole country, the whole world would know what happened. Would see him not as invincible but as vulnerable, human, black. Your phone's been ringing too, Jordan asked. Non-stop. My wife called at 5 this morning, said our house phone's been ringing off the hook. Reporters mostly, but also, Ahmed paused. Some ugly calls, people saying terrible things. Jordan closed his eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to drag you into. Stop, I chose to be here. I chose to stand with you. Don't apologize for doing the right thing. By 8 a.m., the story had metastasized across every major network. Jordan sat in his hotel room with his core group, Ahmed, George Kohler, Fred Whitfield, and Estella, watching CNN cover it live. The anchor, a polished white woman with perfect hair, spoke with practiced concern. The incident raises troubling questions about whether America has truly moved beyond its racist past, even for its most successful black citizens. They cut to a panel discussion. A civil rights attorney praised Jordan's courage. A sports commentator worried about athletes becoming too political. A conservative pundit suggested Jordan was playing victim and should be grateful for his success instead of complaining. "Turn it off," Jordan said. Kohler obliged, but the silence that followed was worse than the talking heads. Jordan's phone rang again. This time he answered. It was David Falk, his agent, speaking at near-panic speed. "Mike, I've been trying to reach you for hours. We have a situation." "I know, I read the papers." "It's bigger than the papers." Gatorade called. McDonald's called. Nike's scheduled an emergency board meeting. Everyone wants to know what you're going to do next, what your strategy is, whether you're planning legal action. "I don't have a strategy, David. I told the truth about what happened." "The truth is complicated, Mike." Falk's voice was strained. "Some of your sponsors are nervous. The Republicans' buy sneakers approach has worked because you've been universal, non-threatening above politics. This changes that calculus." "So what are you saying? I should apologize for being discriminated against?" "No, God, no. I'm saying we need to be strategic. We need talking points, a media plan, a way to frame this that doesn't alienate half your fan base." Jordan looked at Ahmed, who was shaking his head. "David, I appreciate everything you do, but I'm not framing this. It is what it is. A hotel discriminated against me. I spoke out about it. If that costs me sponsors, so be it." "Mike, you're talking about millions of dollars." "I'm talking about my dignity. There's not enough money in the world to buy that back once you've sold it." A long pause on the line. Then Falk, quieter. Okay, I'll handle the sponsors, but Mike, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better." After he hung up, Fred Whitfield spoke for the first time that morning. "He's right, you know. Nike's going to face pressure. Not from Phil, he's solid, but from board members, shareholders, people who think controversy hurts the brand." "What do you think?" Jordan asked. Fred considered carefully. He was a corporate man, understood the business side in ways Jordan never fully would. But he was also a black man who'd navigated white spaces his entire career. "I think you did something Nike can't buy with any marketing campaign. You showed authenticity. You showed that being just like Mike means standing for something, not just selling shoes. The question is whether Nike's brave enough to stand with you." Jordan's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Phil Knight himself, meeting with board at 2 p.m. EST. "I'm fighting for you, trust me." The morning crawled forward with more calls, more texts, more news coverage. ABC, CBS, Fox, everyone wanted Jordan for an interview. Barbara Walters' people called. Oprah's people called. Even 60 Minutes reached out. Estella fielded media requests while Jordan sat by the window watching Wilmington wake up to the news that its most famous son had called out one of its most respected institutions. At 11 a.m., Ahmed's phone rang. He listened, his face going dark, then hung up. That was a friend at ESPN. They're reporting that 3 black NBA players have come forward with their own stories. Patrick Ewing was followed by security at a New York department store last year. Clyde Drexler was questioned trying to enter a Portland country club. And Shaq, he's still a rookie, Mike. Shaq was denied entry to a Louisiana restaurant 2 months ago. Jordan stood up, paced. "This is what I was afraid of." "Why, this proves your point. It proves this isn't isolated. It also makes every black player in the league a target. Every story that comes out, white fans are going to say we're complaining, playing victim, making everything about race." Fred shook his head. "Those stories were always there, Mike. You just gave people permission to tell them. That's not a bad thing. At 1:45 p.m., Jordan's phone rang again. Phil Knight calling personally. "Michael, I wanted you to hear this from me before the board meeting. We're standing with you." Jordan felt something unclench in his chest. "Phil, let me finish. We're standing with you because it's right, yes, but also because it's smart. You know what our sales data shows? Our Black customers are incredibly loyal. They buy more product per capita than any other demographic. And you know why? Because you represent something to them, not just basketball possibility, hope. If we abandon you now, we're telling them their loyalty means nothing. So this is a business decision." "It's both. It's business and it's right. Those don't have to be mutually exclusive." Knight paused. "But Michael, I need you to understand this is going to cost us some customers. We'll see boycotts probably, angry letters, maybe some stores in certain regions pulling our products. The board needs to know you're committed to this, that you're not going to walk it back in a week." Jordan looked at the newspapers spread across his bed, at the story of his humiliation printed for millions to read. Thought about Mr. Tobias Freeman's scarred skull. Thought about his father swallowing insults at a lunch counter. Thought about Keisha Johnson asking how to keep going when people are mean because of your color. "I'm not walking anything back," Jordan said. "This happened. I spoke about it. I'd do it again." "Good, then we're all in. Whatever comes next, Nike's with you." After the call ended, Jordan sat in silence for a long moment. Ahmed and the others waited. "Nike's staying," Jordan finally said. "Knight's going to fight for me with the board." Relief flooded the room, but it was temporary, fragile, because Nike was just one sponsor. There were others, and not all of them would be as brave. By evening, the fallout had begun in earnest. 3 separate petitions appeared online calling for Jordan's sponsors to drop him. Conservative talk radio spent hours discussing whether athletes should stick to sports. A congressman from South Carolina gave a speech on the House floor about victimhood culture and successful people who should be grateful instead of complaining. But there was another side too. The NAACP issued a statement praising Jordan's courage. Jesse Jackson called it a watershed moment in athlete activism. Black newspapers across the country ran editorials celebrating Jordan for using his platform. And the calls kept coming to the Holiday Inn. Some hateful, yes, but many more supportive. Black parents thanking him for showing their kids that success doesn't mean silence. Teachers saying they'd use his story in classrooms. Young players saying they finally felt seen. Marcus Webb, the 11-year-old from Chicago who'd watched the championship parade from his father's shoulders, sent a letter that arrived via FedEx that evening. His father had helped him write it, but the words were his own. "Dear Mr. Jordan, my dad told me what happened to you. He explained that sometimes even champions get treated badly because of their skin. I didn't understand at first because you're the best. But then my dad said something that helped. He said being the best at basketball doesn't make you free from racism, but speaking up about it might make me and other kids a little more free. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for being brave in a different way than basketball. I still want to be like Mike. Maybe even more now. Marcus Webb." Jordan read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in his wallet next to Keisha Johnson's picture in his cap. This was why it mattered. This was why the cost, whatever it ended up being, was worth paying. At 9 p.m., Dolores called. "Baby, you okay?" "I don't know, Mama. I really don't know." "Your father wants to talk to you." There was a rustling, then James Jordan's voice, thick with emotion. "Son, I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I'm sorry I never shared my own experiences with racism. I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong. I was teaching you to swallow it, to accept it, to survive it instead of fight it." "Daddy." "No, let me finish. What you did, speaking out, refusing to stay quiet, that took more courage than anything I ever did. You did what I couldn't. You used your voice. And I'm proud of you. So damn proud. Jordan pressed his palm against his eyes, fighting tears. It's scary, Dad. I don't know what happens next. None of us do, son. But whatever it is, you'll face it like you face everything, with your head up. Because you're a Jordan and we don't bow to hatred. We stand tall. After they hung up, Jordan sat in the dark hotel room, surrounded by newspapers chronicling his humiliation and his defiance. Tomorrow morning, he'd fly back to Chicago. Back to his life, his team, his carefully constructed image that was now forever altered. He'd crossed a line. There was no going back to being the safe, universal, non-threatening pitchman who sold shoes to Republicans and Democrats alike. He was something different now, something more complicated, something more real. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, despite everything he might lose, Jordan felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt free. 3 weeks later, Chicago felt different. Or maybe Jordan felt different in Chicago. He stood at his locker in the Bulls' practice facility, lacing his shoes while ESPN played on the mounted television. The Greystone Inn story refused to die. If anything, it had grown, mutated, become something larger than Jordan had anticipated. In today's top story, the anchor announced, protests continue outside the Greystone Inn in Wilmington, North Carolina, now entering their third week. The screen showed footage Jordan had seen a dozen times: picket lines, protesters carrying signs, black business owners announcing boycotts, the NAACP legal team entering the building with briefcases and determined expressions. One sign caught his attention: "Excellence demands justice." Another: "If Jordan isn't welcome, neither am I." Scottie Pippen dropped onto the bench beside him. "You see the news about Richardson?" Jordan shook his head. Hotels losing money fast, bookings down 60%, 3 major conventions canceled. He's hemorrhaging cash. Scottie grinned. Turns out discriminating against Michael Jordan is bad for business. Jordan didn't smile back. "I didn't want to destroy anyone's livelihood." "You didn't," he destroyed it himself. "You just held up a mirror." At practice, Coach Phil Jackson called the team together. The Zen Master, as they called him, sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, his players forming a circle around him. This was Jackson's way: philosophy before plays, consciousness before competition. "I want to talk about what happened in North Carolina," Jackson said. "Not because it's my business, but because it affects this team. Michael stood up for something. He used his voice. And now we're all standing in his shadow, for better or worse." John Paxson, the white guard from Ohio, spoke up. "Coach is right. I've gotten questions from reporters, from friends, from family. What do you think about what Michael did? Everyone wants to know if we support him." "And do you?" Jackson asked simply. "Hell yes," Paxson said without hesitation. "My father marched with Dr. King in Selma. He taught me that silence is complicity. What Michael did took guts." BJ Armstrong nodded. "I've been getting different questions. Black reporters asking if I've experienced discrimination. White reporters asking if Michael's exaggerating. It's like everyone wants me to pick a side." "There aren't sides," Horace Grant said quietly. The power forward was usually reserved, but his voice carried weight. "There's just truth. Michael told the truth. Whether people like it or not doesn't change what happened." Jackson looked at Jordan. "You've been quiet. How are you handling all this?" Jordan took a breath. "Honestly, some days I regret it. I think about how much easier my life would be if I just stayed quiet, taken their apology money, moved on. I've lost endorsements, not the big ones, but regional deals. I get hate mail. My mom's getting threatening calls at home." The team stirred uncomfortably. "But other days," Jordan continued, I get letters from kids saying I inspired them to speak up about injustice. I get calls from other athletes sharing their stories. Yesterday, a black businessman in Atlanta sent me a letter saying he'd been discriminated against at a restaurant, and because of what I did, he filed a complaint instead of just leaving. He won. Jordan's voice grew stronger. So no, I don't regret it, but it's hard. Harder than I thought it would be. Jackson nodded slowly. The Buddha taught that right action often requires suffering, that the path to enlightenment is through difficulty, not around it. What you did was right action, Michael. The suffering that comes with it is the price of integrity. After practice, Jordan found 3 teammates waiting by his car, Scotty, Horace, and BJ. "We want to do something," Scotty said. "We've been talking. What happened to you happens to all of us in different ways. We want to make a statement." "What kind of statement?" BJ pulled out a folded piece of paper. "We want to hold a press conference, the 4 of us, share our own experiences with discrimination, show that this isn't just a Michael Jordan problem, it's systemic." Jordan felt a surge of gratitude and fear. "You guys don't have to do that. This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is," Horace said. "It's all our fight. You just had the courage to throw the first punch." That evening, Jordan returned to his North Shore home, a mansion that still felt too big, too empty. His housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, had left dinner in the refrigerator and a stack of mail on the counter. He flipped through it, bills, junk mail, and dozens of letters. Some had no return address, which usually meant hate mail, but others came from across the country, carefully addressed, stamps placed with care. He opened one from Wilmington. The return address was 5th Street, Mr. Tobias Freeman. The handwriting was shaky but legible. "Dear Michael, I don't write so good anymore, arthritis. But I needed to tell you something. I'm 95 years old. I've seen a lot of struggle, seen a lot of brave people do brave things. But what you did, speaking up when you had everything to lose, that's a different kind of brave. When I got beat at that lunch counter in 1960, I thought my sacrifice would mean my children wouldn't have to fight these battles. Then I thought maybe my grandchildren. Now I'm old enough to have great-great-grandchildren and they still fighting. But you know what? Each generation fights different, smarter, louder, with more tools and more allies. You gave young people permission to use their success as a weapon for justice instead of just personal comfort. That matters more than you know. Thank you for making my beating mean something. With respect, Tobias Freeman." Jordan read it 3 times, then carefully placed it in a folder he'd started keeping. Letters that mattered, words that sustained him when the backlash felt overwhelming. His phone rang. "Estella Dunn. You see the news?" she asked. "Which news? There's a lot of news." The Justice Department opened a formal investigation into the Greystone Inn, Civil Rights Division. They're looking into pattern and practice discrimination going back years. Jordan sat down heavily. "Because of my story." "Your story was the catalyst, but once they started digging, they found more, so much more. Former employees coming forward, documents, complaints that were never properly investigated. Michael, this is bigger than you now." "Is that good or bad?" "It's real. It's accountability. It's the system actually working for once." She paused. "There's something else. 3 other hotels in North Carolina are being investigated too. Your story gave people courage to come forward about their own experiences." After they hung up, Jordan poured himself a drink, something he rarely did, and stood on his balcony overlooking Lake Michigan. The water was dark, restless, reflecting city lights like scattered stars. His mind drifted back to the championship parade 3 months ago. Marcus Webb on his father's shoulders. Gerald Webb's words, "In America, if you work hard enough, you can be anything." Jordan had believed that once, had built his entire identity around it. Excellence as armor, achievement as acceptance, success as transcendence. But the Greystone Inn had shattered that illusion, had reminded him that no amount of excellence could protect him from seeing hate in someone's eyes, that his blackness would always be visible before his achievements, threatening to those who wanted him to stay in his place. The old Michael Jordan would have swallowed it, would have smiled for the cameras, accepted the apology, protected the brand. But something had shifted that night in the hotel lobby. Some final thread of patience had snapped. Some internal calculus had changed, where dignity became more valuable than dollars, where truth became more important than tranquility. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mr. Jordan, my name is Darnell Washington. I'm 8 years old. My mom works at the Holiday Inn where you stayed. She told me what happened to you and what you did about it. I want to be brave like you when I grow up. Thank you for showing me that champions don't just win games. They stand up for what's right." Jordan stared at the message for a long time. This child, this 8-year-old boy he'd never met, understood something profound. That championship rings were temporary symbols, but character was permanent. That how you responded to injustice defined you more than how you responded to pressure in the fourth quarter. He typed back, "Darnell, you're already brave. Keep being excellent. Keep speaking truth. The world needs more people like you." Inside, the phone rang again. This time it was Ahmed. "Turn on CNN." Jordan grabbed the remote. CNN was running a special segment, Racism and Success. The Michael Jordan story sparks national conversation. The host interviewed a panel, a civil rights attorney, a sports psychologist, a historian, and Charles Barkley, who'd become increasingly outspoken about racial issues. Barkley was mid-sentence. "And this is what I've been trying to tell people. Michael's experience isn't unique. Every successful black person in America has a story like this. We just don't usually talk about it because we're afraid of being called angry or ungrateful or playing the race card. But Mike said, screw that, here's my truth." And that opened the floodgates. The host turned to the civil rights attorney. "Has Jordan's case changed anything legally?" Absolutely. The Justice Department investigation, the renewed scrutiny of hotels and businesses with discrimination complaints, the public pressure, all of that stems from Jordan's willingness to speak publicly. One person's courage can catalyze systemic change. Jordan turned off the television. The weight of it all, the responsibility, the expectations, the hope people were placing in his shoulders, felt crushing and exhilarating simultaneously. His doorbell rang at 10 p.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. Through the security camera, he saw Scotty, Horace, and BJ standing on his porch, holding pizza boxes and beer. He opened the door. "What are you guys doing here?" "Making sure you're not alone," Scotty said, pushing past him into the house. "You've been carrying this by yourself for 3 weeks. That ends tonight." They ate pizza in Jordan's massive living room, trading stories Jordan had never heard before. Horace talked about being followed by security at a Michigan mall during college. BJ shared how a teacher in elementary school had told him he'd never amount to anything because his kind didn't value education. Scotty described being pulled over by police 17 times in 2 years despite never receiving a ticket. Just random stops that always happened when he was driving through white neighborhoods. "Why didn't any of you tell me these stories before?" Jordan asked. "Because you never asked," Scotty said simply. "And because we all learned to swallow it, to keep our heads down, not make waves, be grateful for the opportunity. That's how we were taught to survive." "I'm tired of surviving," Jordan said. "I want to actually live, without constantly calculating how to make white people comfortable." "Then stop calculating," Horace said. "You've already crossed the line, Mike. Might as well walk forward instead of looking back." They talked until 2 a.m., sharing pain and anger and hope in equal measure. When his teammates finally left, Jordan felt less alone than he had in weeks. He climbed the stairs to his bedroom, passing walls covered with awards and photographs. Championships, all-star games, Olympic gold, a life documented in achievements. But tonight, none of those mattered as much as the letters in his folder. The words from Mr. Freeman and Darnell and Marcus and countless others who saw him as more than a basketball player. He was a symbol now, whether he wanted to be or not. The question was what kind of symbol, one who stayed safe and silent, or one who stood for something beyond himself. Jordan looked at his championship ring on the nightstand. It gleamed in the darkness, beautiful and hollow. He'd spent his entire life chasing that ring, believing it would prove something, validate something, change something, but it hadn't changed anything except his bank account. What changed things was truth, was courage, was refusing to accept that excellence should have to coexist with degradation. Tomorrow, he and his teammates would hold that press conference, would share their stories, would expand the conversation beyond one incident at one hotel. The backlash would intensify. He knew that. More sponsors might drop him. More fans might burn his jersey. More commentators would tell him to shut up and dribble. But more kids would also see that standing up was possible. More families would feel less alone in their struggles. More people would understand that the fight wasn't over just because Michael Jordan could jump high and shoot straight. Jordan turned off the light and lay in the darkness, listening to Lake Michigan's waves through the open window. He thought about the Greystone Inn, its pristine facade hiding ugly history. Thought about Harold Richardson and his traditions. Thought about all the polite, carefully coded racism that pretended to be something else. And he thought about what came next, not just basketball, something bigger, something that scared him and called to him in equal measure. A life lived not in fear of losing what he'd earned, but in pursuit of something worth more than championships. Dignity, justice, truth. The price would be high. He was already paying it. But for the first time since that humiliating night in the hotel lobby, Jordan felt like he was paying for something that mattered. Tomorrow, the fight would continue. Tonight, he rested in the knowledge that he was finally fighting the right battle. The United Center practice facility buzzed with an energy Jordan hadn't felt before. It was the first day of preseason training, and the media presence was unprecedented. Not just Chicago sports reporters, but national correspondents, camera crews from all three major networks, even international journalists from Europe and Asia. They weren't there to cover basketball. Jordan arrived early, hoping to avoid the circus. But as he pulled into his reserved spot, he saw them. At least 50 reporters cordoned off by security, cameras already rolling, questions already shouting across the parking lot. "Michael, how does it feel to be back? Are you worried about the backlash affecting team chemistry? Do you regret speaking out about racism?" Jordan kept his head down, walked through the side entrance without acknowledging any of them. Inside, the familiar smell of the gym, leather and sweat and floor wax should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a refuge from a storm he'd created. In the locker room, his teammates were already suiting up. The conversation died the moment he entered, not from hostility but from uncertainty. Nobody knew quite what to say. Scotty broke the silence. "About time you showed up. Thought maybe you retired without telling us." The tension cracked. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Jordan managed a smile. "Can't retire yet. Still got sneakers to sell." But the joke fell flat. Everyone knew his endorsement situation was complicated now. McDonald's had quietly pulled his commercials from certain southern markets. A regional car dealership chain had dropped their sponsorship. Gatorade was reassessing their partnership strategy. Only Nike had stood firm. Phil Knight had released a statement 3 days ago. "Nike stands with Michael Jordan. Excellence and integrity are not mutually exclusive. We're proud to partner with an athlete who represents both." The statement had cost Nike. Conservative groups organized boycotts. Some stores in red states pulled Nike products from shelves. Stock prices dipped 4% in one day, but sales among black consumers had surged 23%. Urban markets were buying Air Jordans faster than Nike could produce them. The net effect was complicated. Nike was taking a financial hit but gaining something harder to quantify: authenticity, cultural relevance, moral standing. Phil Jackson entered the locker room, his tall frame folding into a chair. He studied his players with those penetrating eyes that saw everything. "Gentlemen, we need to address the elephant in the room. Michael's situation affects all of us. The media wants to make this season about race and politics instead of basketball. We're not going to let them." "How do we stop them?" B.J. Armstrong asked. "We don't stop them, we control our narrative." Jackson turned to Jordan. "You, Scotty, Horace, and BJ are holding a press conference tomorrow. You'll share your experiences, make your statement, then move on. After that, we talk basketball. Only basketball. We let our play do the talking." Jordan nodded. The plan made sense. Get ahead of the story, control the message, then redirect focus to what mattered. But part of him knew it wouldn't be that simple. You couldn't just turn off a national conversation about racism because you wanted to play basketball. Practice was intense. Jordan pushed himself harder than necessary, channeling frustration into every sprint, every drill, every defensive rotation. His body remembered this, the physical exhaustion that quieted mental chaos, the simplicity of basketball compared to the complexity of everything else. During a water break, John Paxson approached. The white guard looked uncomfortable, like he was working up courage. "Mike, I need to tell you something." Jordan wiped sweat from his face. "What's up?" "My dad called last night. He wanted me to tell you," Paxson's voice caught. "He marched in Selma in 1965, got beaten by police, spent 3 days in jail. He said what you did reminded him why he marched in the first place. He said to tell you he's proud of you." Jordan felt his throat tighten. "Thank you, Pax, that means a lot." He also said something else. He said white people like him failed. They thought marching and passing laws would fix everything. But they got tired, moved on to other causes, left black folks to keep fighting alone. He said not to let people like me get comfortable again, to keep pushing. "You telling me to keep making you uncomfortable?" Jordan asked with a slight smile. "I'm telling you I'm listening. We're listening." Paxson gestured to the other white players. "And we want to help, we just don't always know how." After practice, Jordan showered and dressed, knowing he couldn't avoid the media forever. He walked to the press room where 75 reporters waited, cameras positioned, recorders ready, questions loaded. He took his seat at the table, the Bulls logo behind him, and faced the firing squad. The first question came from a Chicago Tribune reporter. "Michael, do you worry that your activism will distract from the Bulls' championship defense?" "No, I can be excellent at basketball and stand up for what's right. Those things aren't mutually exclusive." "Some fans are burning your jersey. Does that hurt?" Jordan paused, choosing his words carefully. "If someone's willing to burn a jersey because I spoke out against being discriminated against, they were never really my fan. They were a fan of their idea of me, quiet, safe, non-threatening. That's not who I am." A Southern reporter with a thick accent spoke up. "Do you think you're being divisive? That you're making race relations worse by bringing this up?" The question hung in the air. Jordan felt anger rising but pushed it down. "I didn't make race relations worse. I just made them visible. The racism was always there. I just refused to pretend it wasn't." "But by speaking out, aren't you playing into—" "Playing into what?" Jordan cut him off. "The truth. The reality that even the most successful black person in sports can be turned away from a hotel because of his skin color. If that makes people uncomfortable, good. It should. because it's still happening. The questions continued for 40 minutes, some sympathetic, some hostile, all probing for weakness, for regret, for some crack in his resolve. Jordan gave them nothing. When it finally ended, he walked out to find Ahmed waiting in the hallway. "You handled that well," Ahmed said. "I'm exhausted, and that's just day one of preseason. It gets easier." Does it? Or do we just get better at pretending it doesn't hurt? They walked through the facility toward the players' parking lot. Through the windows, Chicago spread out below them. A city that had embraced Jordan, made him theirs, but that still struggled with the same racial divisions that plagued every American city. "I got a call from Magic Johnson this morning," Ahmed said. "He wants to talk to you." "About what?" "About what comes next, about using your platform, about the responsibility that comes with being who you are." Ahmed stopped walking. "Mike, whether you want it or not, you've become something beyond a basketball player. You're a leader now, in a different way than championship leadership. This is about something bigger." Jordan leaned against the window, looking out at his city. "I just wanted to play basketball. That's all I ever wanted." "I know, but life doesn't let you just be one thing, especially not when you're this good at what you do and this visible doing it." That evening, Jordan drove home through Chicago's South Side. He didn't have to take this route. The highway was faster, but he wanted to see his people, wanted to remember why this all mattered. He passed basketball courts where kids played in the fading light, their movements mimicking his, the tongue out, the follow-through, the swagger. He passed corner stores with his face on posters in the windows. He passed houses where families gathered on porches, escaping the heat, living lives far removed from his wealth but connected to his struggle. At a red light, a car pulled up beside him. A black woman, maybe 40, rolled down her window. "Mr. Jordan, thank you. Thank you for speaking up." He nodded, waved. The light turned green. 2 blocks later, a different car. A white man, middle-aged, leaning out his window. "You're ruining basketball. Keep your politics out of sports." The contrast was stark, jarring. Jordan's America was 2 Americas, and he was learning that you couldn't please both. At home, he found more letters, always more letters. One from a teacher in Alabama. "I used your story in my classroom. We talked about courage, about speaking truth to power. Half the class understood. Half got angry, but at least we're talking about it." One from a single mother in Philadelphia. "My son asks why you spoke out when you knew it would cost you. I told him because some things are more important than money. Thank you for helping me teach him that." One from a retired Army colonel in Texas. "I fought for this country. I love this country. And I'm ashamed that in 1991, Michael Jordan can still be discriminated against in an American hotel. Thank you for your service in a different kind of battle." And one from Wilmington, from Pastor Jeremiah Stone. "Michael." The protests continue here. The investigation deepens. The community is energized in ways I haven't seen since the 1960s, but I want you to know something. This isn't about the Greystone Inn anymore. It's about the hundreds of other places, big and small, where people are discriminated against every day. Your story gave them permission to speak up. You can't save everyone. You can't fix everything. But you started something. Now others will continue it. That's leadership. With respect and admiration, Pastor Stone. Jordan sat in his kitchen, surrounded by letters, feeling the weight of all those words, all those hopes, all those expectations pressing down on him. His phone rang. His mother. "Baby, you okay? I saw your press conference." "I'm tired, Mama." "I know, but you're doing something important, something that matters." "What if it's not enough? What if I lose everything and nothing changes?" Dolores was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember when you got cut from varsity? You came home crying. You wanted to quit basketball." "I remember." I told you then, you can't control what other people do. You can only control how you respond. You chose to work harder to prove them wrong, and you did. This is different, Mama. This isn't about proving I'm good at basketball. No, it's about proving you're good at being human, at standing up for what's right even when it costs you. And baby, you're already proving that, every day. After they hung up, Jordan walked to his trophy room, a space he rarely entered, filled with awards and accolades from a career that wasn't even half over. MVP trophies, all-star plaques, the Olympic gold medal, the championship trophy from June. He picked up the championship trophy, felt its weight. 3 months ago, this had been everything. The culmination of years of work, the validation he'd craved, the proof that he was the best. Now it felt like just an object. Beautiful, meaningful, but not sufficient. Not enough to quiet the voice inside him that demanded more. Not more championships, but more purpose. He'd spent his whole life learning to be excellent at basketball. Now he was learning to be excellent at something harder, being fully human in a world that wanted him to be partially visible, selectively authentic, conveniently black only when it sold shoes but invisible when it challenged comfort. Tomorrow, the press conference with his teammates. They'd share their stories, expand the conversation, refuse to let this moment pass without meaning. The day after, season opener against the Charlotte Hornets in Charlotte, North Carolina. Less than an hour from Wilmington, less than an hour from the Greystone Inn. The media would frame it as Jordan's revenge game. But Jordan knew it was something else. It was a statement that he wouldn't be chased away, wouldn't be silenced, wouldn't shrink from the place that had tried to diminish him. He'd play basketball. He'd do what he did better than anyone alive. But he'd do it on his terms now, with his full humanity intact, with his voice unlocked, with his truth spoken. The cost would be high, was already high, but the alternative, staying silent, staying safe, staying small, was a cost he was no longer willing to pay. Jordan turned off the lights in his trophy room and headed to bed. Tomorrow, the fight would continue. But tonight, he rested in the knowledge that he was finally fighting for something bigger than himself. And that made all the difference. The Charlotte Coliseum held 23,698 people. On November 7, 1991, every single seat was filled. Jordan stood in the visitors' locker room, wrapping his ankles with the same careful precision he'd used for years. The ritual calmed him. Left ankle first, figure 8 pattern, tight but not constricting. Right ankle second, same process. Some players let trainers do this. Jordan never did. Control the controllable, but today his hands shook slightly. Through the concrete walls, he could hear the crowd, louder than normal, more electric. They weren't here just to watch basketball. They were here to witness something else. A statement, a reckoning. George Kohler entered, clipboard in hand. "Mike, there's a section you need to see." Jordan followed him to the tunnel entrance, peeked out at the arena. In section 114, behind the Bulls bench, sat 100 people, all wearing Bulls jerseys, all black, all from Wilmington. The kids from the community center project, their families, teachers, Pastor Stone, Mr. Tobias Freeman in his wheelchair positioned at the end of the front row. And sitting beside Freeman, wearing Jordan's Bulls cap from 3 months ago, was Keisha Johnson. 10 years old, eyes wide, clutching a handmade sign. "Be so good they can't ignore you." Jordan felt something break open in his chest. "Your mother arranged it," Kohler said quietly. "Chartered buses, got the tickets donated by the Hornets organization. She wanted you to know who you're playing for tonight." Jordan couldn't speak. He nodded, blinked hard, turned back toward the locker room before emotion overwhelmed him. In the locker room, Phil Jackson gathered the team. "Gentlemen, tonight is about basketball, but it's also about something more. Every eye in America is watching. They want to see if we're distracted, if we're divided, if Michael's controversy has weakened us. We're going to show them what Chicago Bulls basketball looks like when we're united." Jackson turned to Jordan. "Michael, you don't need to prove anything tonight, but I know you will anyway. Just remember, this is a team game. Use that." Jordan looked at his teammates, Scotty, Horace, BJ, Paxson, all of them ready to follow him anywhere. "I won't forget." The press conference 2 days ago had been powerful. All four of them sharing their stories, standing together, refusing to let Jordan carry the burden alone. The media had exploded with coverage. Some positive, some vitriolic, but the message was clear. This wasn't just Michael Jordan's problem. This was systemic. Now came the response. On the court, where Jordan had always done his best talking, the national anthem played. Jordan stood with his hand over his heart, looking directly at the Wilmington section. Keisha waved. He nodded back. The game tipped off at 7:35 p.m. From the opening possession, Jordan was locked in. He moved differently than usual, sharper, more aggressive, like he was channeling something beyond basketball. First possession, he caught the ball at the elbow, sized up his defender, and rose for a jumper. Swish. 2 points in the first 8 seconds. The crowd roared. Jordan ran back on defense without expression. Second possession, he found Scotty cutting backdoor for an easy layup. 4-0 Bulls. Third possession, Jordan stole the ball from Charlotte's point guard, took it coast to coast, and threw down a dunk so ferocious the rim shook. The Wilmington section went wild. 6-0 Bulls. 90 seconds gone. Charlotte called timeout. Jordan walked to the bench, didn't sit, just stood there breathing, focused, unreachable. "Easy, Mike," Jackson said. "It's a long game." But Jordan wasn't listening to reason tonight. Tonight was about sending a message. By the end of the first quarter, Jordan had 15 points, 4 assists. The Bulls led 32-18. He was playing with surgical precision, every pass perfect, every shot falling, every defensive rotation exact. This was Jordan at his absolute best, when basketball became art, when excellence became inevitable. But midway through the second quarter, something happened. Kyle Brennan, a backup forward for Charlotte, checked into the game. Jordan recognized him immediately, the guy from the exhibition game in Wilmington, the one who'd made the comment about the hotel. Brennan checked Jordan hard on a drive, knocking him to the floor. The referee swallowed the whistle, playoff physicality bleeding into the regular season. Jordan got up slowly. Brennan stood over him. "You done crying about that hotel yet?" Brennan said, just loud enough for Jordan to hear. "Or you gonna write another article about how tough your life is?" Something ignited in Jordan's eyes, something dangerous. Ahmed, watching from the bench, saw it. Oh no. The next possession, Jordan isolated Brennan at the top of the key. The arena went quiet, sensing what was about to happen. Jordan dribbled once, twice, then exploded left. Brennan tried to stay with him, but Jordan was too quick, too skilled, too determined. He rose for a layup, absorbed contact from Brennan's desperate foul, and finished anyway. And one. Jordan stared at Brennan as the ball dropped through. "That's how I respond." The free throw fell. Bulls by 20. 3 possessions later, Jordan caught the ball on the wing with Brennan guarding him. This time he didn't drive. He rose straight up from 23 feet, Brennan's hand in his face, and drained the three-pointer. Bulls by 23. Jordan had scored 12 straight points, all with Brennan as primary defender. Charlotte's coach pulled Brennan from the game. As he walked to the bench, Brennan's shoulders were slumped, his spirit broken. Jordan had destroyed him not with trash talk, but with excellence, pure, undeniable excellence. At halftime, the Bulls led 78-46. Jordan had 38 points on 18 for 22 shooting. The stat line was absurd, efficient beyond reason, dominant beyond question. In the locker room, his teammates were almost subdued. They just witnessed something special, something beyond normal basketball excellence. "You okay?" Scotty asked quietly. Jordan was staring at his hands, breathing hard. "I needed that." "We could tell." Jackson entered, looked at the stat sheet, set it down. "Well, that's one way to make a statement." The second half started differently. Jordan came out facilitating, getting everyone involved. He assisted on the first 6 Bulls baskets, making the beautiful pass, the right play, showing that his dominance wasn't selfish. But in the fourth quarter, with Charlotte mounting a small comeback, Jordan took over again. A three-pointer from 25 feet, a steal and breakaway dunk, a fadeaway jumper over 2 defenders. Every basket felt like punctuation. Every point felt like proof. With 2 minutes left and the game decided, Bulls up 119-98, Jackson pulled Jordan. The standing ovation was thunderous. Even Charlotte fans, many of whom had probably burned his jersey or called him divisive, stood and applauded. Because excellence transcends politics. Greatness demands respect. Final score, Bulls 124, Hornets 103. Jordan, 52 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds, 4 steals. He'd shot 24 for 35 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, 2 for 2 from the line. The performance was complete, dominant, undeniable. In the post-game press conference, reporters crowded around Jordan's podium. Michael was tonight about what happened in Wilmington. Jordan chose his words carefully. Tonight was about showing these kids, he gestured toward the Wilmington section, still visible through the arena tunnel, that you respond to hate with greatness, that you don't lower yourself to fight in the mud. You elevate. You be so excellent that their hatred looks small next to your greatness. So this was revenge. No, revenge is personal, temporary, hollow. This was about proving something bigger, that excellence is the most profound response to discrimination. That being undeniable is more powerful than being angry. A Charlotte reporter stood up. Some people think you should just play basketball and leave the social commentary to others. What do you say to them? Jordan leaned forward, his voice steady but firm. I am playing basketball at the highest possible level, but I'm also a human being who experiences discrimination. Those things coexist. I'm not going to pretend the latter doesn't exist just to make people comfortable with the former. After the press conference, Jordan walked back toward the visitors' locker room. But before entering, he detoured to section 114, where the Wilmington group was waiting. They mobbed him, kids, parents, grandparents, all wanting to touch him, thank him, celebrate with him. Security tried to maintain order, but Jordan waved them off. He went to each child, signed autographs, took pictures, answered questions. When he reached Keisha Johnson, he knelt down to her level. Did you see that? She asked, breathless. You were excellent, just like you said. Did you see you? Jordan countered, pointing at her sign. You remembered, you understood. I practice every day now, Keisha said. Being excellent. My teacher says I'm the best reader in class. My mom says I'm more confident because of what you said. Jordan felt tears threaten. He pulled off his game jersey, soaked with sweat but still the jersey from the night he'd scored 52 points, and placed it in her hands. You keep being excellent, Keisha. Keep being brave. Promise me. I promise. Mr. Tobias Freeman was last. The 95-year-old sat in his wheelchair, tears streaming down his weathered face. Jordan knelt beside him. That was for you, Jordan said quietly, for what you sacrificed. Freeman's shaking hand gripped Jordan's. No, son, that was for you, for your dignity, for your truth. I just opened a door. You're the one walking through it with your head up. Pastor Stone placed a hand on both their shoulders. 3 generations of black men connected by struggle and triumph, by pain and perseverance. This moment, the pastor said, this is what freedom looks like. Not the freedom to be comfortable, but the freedom to be fully human. Flawed, angry, excellent, complex, all of it. As Jordan finally made his way to the locker room, a white man in his 60s approached, face red, eyes wet. He wore a Hornets jersey but carried a Bulls cap in his hands. Mr. Jordan, please, can I speak to you? Security moved to intercept, but Jordan stopped them. "I'm from Wilmington," the man said, his voice breaking. "I'm ashamed. Ashamed of what happened at that hotel. Ashamed that I've lived in this town 70 years and never spoke up about places like that. Ashamed that it took you being humiliated for me to see what's been happening all along." Jordan studied him, looking for insincerity, for performance, for the hollow apology of people who want absolution without change. But all he saw was genuine remorse. "What's your name?" Robert Calloway. "I taught history at New Hanover High for 40 years. I taught your brothers." "Mr. Calloway, I appreciate you saying this, but the question isn't whether you're sorry. It's what you do next." "What can I do?" "Teach the truth, all of it, not the sanitized version. Teach about the Greystone Inn's history. Teach about the lunch counter protests. Teach about Williston High School. Make sure the next generation knows what happened so they can do better." Calloway nodded, clutching the bull's cap like a prayer. "I will. I promise I will." In the locker room, Jordan sat in front of his locker, too exhausted to shower yet. His teammates gave him space, understanding that tonight had been about more than basketball. Scotty finally approached, sat beside him. "That was the most focused I've ever seen you, and that's saying something." "I needed to prove something." "To who? Everyone already knows you're the best." "Not to them, to me." Jordan looked at his hands, the hands that had just scored 52 points, that had signed autographs for kids who saw him as hope, that had shaken the hand of a man ashamed of his silence. "I needed to prove I could be excellent at basketball and honest about racism at the same time, that those things don't cancel each other out." "You proved it," Scotty said simply. On the bus back to the hotel, a Marriott this time, corporate and safe and welcoming, Jordan sat in the back looking out at Charlotte passing by. Somewhere not far from here was Wilmington. Somewhere in Wilmington was the Greystone Inn, still under investigation, still hemorrhaging money, still paying the price for hatred disguised as policy. Jordan didn't feel vindicated. He felt tired, but also something else, something like peace. Like he'd finally integrated all the parts of himself. The athlete and the activist, the champion and the human, the excellent and the angry, the grateful and the defiant. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother I watched every second. "Your father called during the game, crying. He said you did what he couldn't, that you made it all worth it. We love you, baby. So proud." Jordan typed back, "I love you too, Mama. Thank you for bringing those kids, for reminding me why this matters." Another text from an unknown number. "Mr. Jordan, this is Tommy Bradford. You let me score in the exhibition game. I made my high school team today. Coach said I played with confidence. Said something changed in me. Thank you for seeing me. Tommy." Jordan stared at that message for a long time. This was the ripple effect. This was impact beyond basketball. This was legacy that mattered more than championships. He saved both messages, added them to the growing collection of words that sustained him when the cost of truth felt too high. Outside, North Carolina rolled past in darkness. Somewhere in that darkness were people celebrating his performance tonight. Somewhere were people cursing his name for speaking out. Somewhere were kids practicing basketball with their tongues out, trying to be like Mike, in ways they didn't fully understand yet. And somewhere, in a hotel room in Chicago, Marcus Webb, the 11-year-old who'd watched the championship parade from his father's shoulders, was staying up past his bedtime, watching highlights of Jordan's 52-point game, understanding for the first time that being like Mike meant more than just basketball. It meant being brave enough to tell the truth, even when the truth cost you everything. Jordan closed his eyes, let the bus rock him, felt the weight of the night settling into his bones. Tomorrow, they'd fly home. The season would continue. The backlash would intensify. The investigation would deepen. The story would evolve. But tonight he'd proven something to himself and to everyone watching. That excellence and integrity weren't mutually exclusive. that you could be the best in the world and still demand to be treated like a human being. That championships were temporary, but character was permanent. That sometimes the most important game you play has nothing to do with the score. Jordan fell asleep on the bus, his body exhausted, his spirit somehow lighter than it had been in months. He'd crossed the Rubicon. There was no going back to who he was before the Greystone Inn. But maybe that was okay. Maybe who he was becoming was better than who he'd been. Maybe fighting for something beyond himself was the greatest achievement of all. The bus rolled on through the North Carolina night, carrying a champion who'd finally learned that some victories can't be measured in points. December 1991 came cold to Wilmington. The magnolia trees outside the Greystone Inn had lost their blooms, leaving bare branches that looked like skeletal fingers reaching toward a gray sky. Inside, Harold Richardson sat in his office, surrounded by lawyers and documents that threatened to destroy everything he'd built. The Justice Department's Civil Rights Division had been thorough. Too thorough. Agent Patricia Williams, a black woman in her 40s with 20 years at the DOJ, sat across from Richardson with 3 boxes of evidence. Her partner, Agent David Chen, stood by the window, arms crossed, expression neutral. "Mr. Richardson," Agent Williams began, her voice professionally cold, "we've completed our preliminary investigation. The findings are extensive." She opened the first box. 17 former employees have come forward with testimony. 12 of them are willing to testify under oath that they received explicit instructions to deny certain rooms to black guests, to use language like "not appropriate" or "fully booked" when it was demonstrably false. Richardson's lead attorney, Martin Keyes, interjected, "Hearsay, disgruntled employees with axes to grind," including 3 white employees. Agent Williams raised an eyebrow. "Who have nothing to gain and everything to lose by testifying, who kept detailed notes because they were uncomfortable with the practices." She pulled out a folder. Susan Pritchard, front desk manager from 1988 to 1990. She kept a personal log documenting 23 separate incidents where she was instructed to deny rooms to black guests despite availability. She has dates, names, and contemporaneous notes. "She was fired for theft," Richardson said, his voice tight. "She was fired 3 days after she questioned your policies to HR," Agent Chen corrected. "We've seen the termination paperwork. The timeline is interesting." Agent Williams opened a second box. "Financial records. We've traced your business accounts, donations, and affiliations. You've contributed over $50,000 to organizations that actively oppose the Civil Rights Act. You're a member of the Heritage Preservation Society, which sounds benign until you read their literature about protecting Southern traditions and states' rights. Those are legal contributions to legal organizations," Keyes protested. "Political affiliations aren't evidence of discrimination." "No, but they establish pattern and motive," Agent Williams said. "And when combined with employee testimony and this," she pulled out a memo, "they become very compelling." She slid the memo across the desk. Richardson didn't need to read it. He knew what it said. An internal communication from 1989 referencing maintaining clientele standards and preserving the character of the establishment. "Those are business terms," Richardson said weakly. "Are they?" Agent Williams leaned forward. "Because when we showed this memo to your former assistant manager, he broke down and explained what clientele standards really meant, what you meant when you said character. The code words you used to avoid explicitly saying what you really meant." She opened the third box. "Complaint records. Over the past 15 years, 27 formal complaints filed with the NAACP, the local Human Rights Commission, even a few with local police. All documented, all dismissed for lack of evidence. But the pattern is undeniable. Agent Chen turned from the window. "Here's what we know, Mr. Richardson. For decades, you've run a discriminatory establishment. You've been careful, using coded language, maintaining plausible deniability, making it hard to prove. But Michael Jordan's case gave people courage to come forward. And once they started talking, the dam broke." Richardson slumped in his chair. He looked old, suddenly diminished. "I built this place from nothing." "You built it on hate," Agent Williams said simply. "You preserved a version of the South that never should have existed, and you profited from excluding people who didn't look like you." "What happens now?" Keyes asked. "We're recommending charges under Title II of the Civil Rights Act, pattern and practice discrimination. If convicted, Mr. Richardson faces significant fines, possible jail time, and mandatory remediation, including complete staff retraining, oversight, and civil penalties." "How much?" Richardson whispered. "Monetarily, between legal fees, fines, and civil settlements, you're looking at potentially millions of dollars." Agent Williams closed her boxes. "But that's not the real cost, is it? The real cost is your reputation, your legacy, the fact that everyone will know what you really are." After the agents left, Richardson sat in silence with his lawyers. Through the window, he could see protesters still marching, fewer than at the height of the controversy, but persistent. Signs reading "Justice for Jordan" and "No More Hate" bobbed in the cold December air. "Can we fight this?" Richardson asked. Keyes shook his head. "Not successfully. The evidence is overwhelming. Our best option is a settlement. Admit no wrongdoing, agree to policy changes, pay a fine, move forward." Admit no wrongdoing. Everyone already knows. Which is why fighting will only make it worse. Take the settlement. At least you keep the business. But Richardson knew the truth. Even with a settlement, the Greystone Inn was dying. Bookings were down 70% now. Every major convention had canceled. Banks were threatening to call loans. The building itself, pristine, perfectly preserved, historically significant, was becoming worthless because of what it represented. Meanwhile, across town, the community center project was thriving. Jordan had tripled his donation after the Charlotte game. Nike had added $250,000. Other corporations, sensing the PR opportunity, had contributed. What started as a modest project had become a $25 million facility with basketball courts, computer labs, a library, and a job training center. Pastor Jeremiah Stone stood at the construction site, watching workers pour concrete for the foundation. Beside him stood Dolores Jordan and Mr. Tobias Freeman, wrapped in blankets against the cold. "This is what redemption looks like," Pastor Stone said. "Not perfect, not complete, but moving forward." "Michael did this," Dolores said. "He turned humiliation into something beautiful." "No," Mr. Freeman corrected gently. "He turned humiliation into truth. The community did the rest. That's how change works. One person speaks up, others find their voices, and suddenly what was tolerated becomes intolerable." The building would be called the Freeman Jordan Community Center, honoring both the man who'd bled in 1960 and the man who'd spoken up in 1991. Two generations of resistance, connected by courage. In Chicago, Jordan was dealing with different consequences. The NBA season was in full swing, and the Bulls were dominating. But Jordan's endorsement situation remained complicated. A regional banking chain in Georgia had dropped their sponsorship. A car dealership group in Alabama canceled their advertising campaign. But these losses were offset by gains elsewhere: increased sales in urban markets, new partnerships with Black-owned businesses, speaking requests from universities and civil rights organizations. Nike's fourth-quarter earnings came out in late December. Despite the boycotts and controversy, profits were up. The Air Jordan line had its best quarter ever. Phil Knight's gamble had paid off financially, but more importantly, it had positioned Nike as a company willing to stand for something beyond profit. Jordan sat in Knight's office in Portland, reviewing the numbers. "You cost us customers," Knight said bluntly, "but you gained us credibility. And in the long run, credibility is worth more than comfort." "I never meant to be a business case study," Jordan said. "Too bad. You are. Business schools will teach your story, how taking a moral stand can actually strengthen a brand if it's authentic, how controversy isn't always bad for business if you handle it right." Jordan looked out at the Portland rain. "What about the threats, the hate mail, some of your stores getting vandalized because they support me?" "Security concern, yes. Business concern, no. The people vandalizing our stores were never going to be long-term customers anyway. They're just loud." Knight leaned back in his chair. "Michael, you gave us something we couldn't buy with any marketing budget: authenticity. You showed that just do it isn't just about sports. It's about courage, about standing up, about doing the hard thing even when it costs you." "Is that what the commercial should say?" Jordan asked with a slight smile. "Actually, yes." Knight pulled out a folder. "We're planning a new campaign for spring, not basketball-focused, message-focused, about using your platform, your voice, your success for something beyond yourself. We want you to narrate it." Jordan read the proposed script. It was powerful, linking athletic excellence to moral courage, championship performance to character, being great to doing good. "This is risky," Jordan said. "This will piss off a lot of people." "Good, let them be pissed. We're not trying to please everyone anymore. We're trying to mean something." Back in Wilmington, the Greystone Inn received another blow. 3 major banks simultaneously called their loans, citing reputation risk and community backlash. Richardson had 30 days to pay $18 million or face foreclosure. He couldn't pay. The business was hemorrhaging money, the property was toxic, and no investor wanted to touch it. On December 23, 1991, Richardson's lawyers filed for bankruptcy protection. The announcement made local news, then national news. The hotel that had turned away Michael Jordan was closing. But the story didn't end with closure. A coalition of Black business owners and community leaders announced plans to purchase the property. They'd renovate it, rename it, transform it from a symbol of exclusion to a symbol of community ownership. Estella Dunn covered the announcement for the Charlotte Observer. Her article was picked up nationally. From exclusion to inclusion, Greystone Inn to become community-owned hotel. The symbolism was powerful. The place that refused Jordan would become a place that welcomed everyone. The building that had preserved racist traditions would be rebuilt on principles of equity and inclusion. Jordan read the article in his Chicago home on Christmas Eve. His family was gathered, his parents, his siblings, their children. The house was loud with laughter and celebration, but Jordan stepped away to his office, needing a moment alone with his thoughts. 6 months ago, he'd walked into that hotel lobby expecting nothing more complicated than a room key. 6 months ago, he'd been a champion focused on basketball, carefully avoiding controversy, protecting his brand. Now he was something different, still a champion but also an activist, a symbol, a lightning rod. He'd gained credibility but lost innocence. He'd found his voice but paid a price for using it. His phone rang. "Estella, Merry Christmas, Michael. I wanted you to know before it's published, I'm writing a follow-up piece. 6 months later, where things stand. The investigation wrapping up, the hotel closing, the community center opening, your role in all of it. What's the angle? That one moment of discrimination sparked a movement. That your refusal to stay silent created space for others to speak up. That courage is contagious. I didn't start a movement, Estella. I just told the truth about what happened to me. And that's exactly why it became a movement, because it was truth, not strategy. Because you were willing to risk everything for dignity. She paused. The piece runs January 1st. New year, new story, same truth. After they hung up, Jordan returned to his family. His niece, 7 years old, tugged on his sleeve. "Uncle Michael, is it true you're a hero?" Jordan knelt down to her level, thought about the question. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a person who spoke up when something wrong happened. That's not heroic, that's just human." "My teacher says you're brave." "Your teacher is kind, but bravery is just being honest even when it's hard." His niece hugged him and Jordan held her, thinking about all the children who saw him as something more than a basketball player now. The responsibility felt crushing and exhilarating simultaneously. Outside, snow began to fall on Chicago, rare, beautiful, transforming the city into something clean and new. Jordan watched through the window, his family's laughter warming the house, his conscience finally at peace. The investigation would conclude. The hotel would close. The community center would open. Life would move forward, but something fundamental had shifted. Jordan had learned that silence in the face of injustice was complicity. That excellence without integrity was empty. That championships mattered less than character. The price had been high, was still being paid, but looking at his niece's face, at his parents' pride, at the snow falling clean and white on Chicago, Jordan knew he'd made the right choice. Some victories couldn't be measured in points. Some costs were worth paying. Some truths were worth speaking, no matter what they cost. February 1992 brought an unseasonable warmth to Wilmington. The kind of fall spring that made people believe winter was over, even though March would come harsh and cold again. Harold Richardson sat in a conference room at his attorney's office, facing a reality he'd spent 4 months trying to avoid. On one side of the table sat his legal team, expensive suits and tired eyes. On the other sat representatives from the Justice Department, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and a new face, a lawyer representing the community coalition that wanted to purchase the Greystone Inn. Agent Patricia Williams opened the folder in front of her. "Mr. Richardson, we've reached the settlement phase. The terms are non-negotiable." Richardson's hands trembled as he reached for his water glass. He'd aged years in months. The man who'd stood in that lobby in July, confident in his traditions, now looked hollow, defeated. "The United States government requires the following," Agent Williams continued. 1. A formal public apology specifically naming Michael Jordan and acknowledging the discriminatory practices at the Greystone Inn. 2. Full cooperation with the ongoing federal investigation, including testimony about practices and policies. 3. A settlement payment of $500,000 to be divided between the Jordan Family Community Foundation and a fund for victims of housing discrimination. Martin Keyes leaned forward. "That's an admission of guilt. We can't." "You can and you will," the NAACP attorney interrupted. Her name was Sharon Matthews, and she'd been fighting cases like this for 20 years. Because the alternative is a protracted trial where every ugly detail becomes public record, where your client's associations, donations, and documented policies are examined under oath, where dozens of witnesses testify about being turned away. Do you really want that? Richardson closed his eyes. What else? Mandatory sensitivity training for all staff, which is moot since you're closing, but it's required for the record, Agent Williams said. And you must sign over the property to the Community Coalition for fair market value, with the understanding that you'll accept their offer without negotiation. The Community Coalition's lawyer, a young black man named Andre Washington, slid a purchase agreement across the table. "We're offering $12 million for the property. That's $400,000 below market value, but given the circumstances, it's generous." "I owe more than that to the banks," Richardson protested. "Not our problem," Andre said flatly. "The banks will take what they can get. You'll take a loss. That's what happens when you build a business on hate." Richardson's attorney reviewed the terms, whispered urgently with his client, then nodded. "We accept. With one condition, Mr. Richardson wants assurance that this ends all potential legal exposure. No future civil suits, no additional criminal charges." Sharon Matthews smiled coldly. "We can't control private civil actions. Anyone who was discriminated against can still sue him personally. But the government will close its investigation and recommend no criminal charges if he complies fully with these terms." "How many people are we talking about?" Keyes asked. "How many potential civil suits?" "Based on the complaints we've documented, at least 40 families, maybe more once this becomes public and others come forward." Sharon let that sink in. Each one could sue for damages, emotional distress, punitive penalties. Do the math. Richardson put his head in his hands. Everything he'd built, 40 years of business, his reputation, his legacy, was crumbling. And for what? For the privilege of making people feel unwelcome, for preserving traditions that were just hatred in formal dress. "I'll sign," he said quietly. The settlement was executed that afternoon. By evening, press releases had been issued. The Justice Department announced the successful resolution of its investigation. The NAACP praised the outcome as a victory for civil rights. And Michael Jordan, reached by reporters in Chicago, issued a statement through his publicist. "I appreciate Mr. Richardson's acknowledgement and apology. More importantly, I'm grateful this led to systemic change, not just at one hotel, but in how we address discrimination everywhere. The community center being built in Wilmington, the awareness raised nationally, the courage others found to speak up, that's what matters. This was never about destroying one man or one business. It was about demanding dignity for everyone." The statement was carefully crafted, gracious without being weak, firm without being vindictive. It kept Jordan on the moral high ground while refusing to minimize what had happened. That evening, Richardson appeared on local television to read his court-mandated apology. He looked diminished, reading words his lawyers had written, his voice barely audible. "I apologize to Michael Jordan for the treatment he received at the Greystone Inn in July 1991. The policies and practices that led to him being turned away were wrong, discriminatory, and inexcusable. I apologize to the African American community of Wilmington and to all who have been affected by discriminatory practices at my establishment over the years. I take full responsibility and express my deepest regret." The words were hollow, mechanical, forced. Everyone watching knew he wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd been caught, sorry he'd faced consequences, sorry his victim had been famous enough to matter. But hollow or not, the words were on record. The apology was documented. The admission was made. In Wilmington, people gathered at Pastor Stone's church to watch the broadcast together. When it ended, the room erupted, not in celebration exactly, but in something like vindication. Something like justice, imperfect and incomplete but real. Mr. Tobias Freeman, now 96 and increasingly frail, spoke from his wheelchair. 32 years I waited after they beat me at that lunch counter. 32 years before I saw real consequences for this kind of hatred. It took Michael Jordan getting turned away for people to finally care. But I'll take it. Justice delayed is better than justice denied." The room murmured agreement. Pastor Stone added, "This isn't the end. This is a beginning. One hotel held accountable doesn't fix systemic racism, but it's a crack in the wall, and cracks let light in." In Chicago, Jordan watched the apology in his home office, Ahmed Rashid beside him. When it ended, Jordan felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no sense of victory. "You okay?" Ahmed asked. "I don't feel anything. I thought I would, but I don't. Why not? Because it doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase the humiliation. It doesn't change that for one moment in a hotel lobby in my hometown. I was made to feel like I didn't belong. Jordan paused. And it doesn't change that this happens to people every day who don't have cameras and lawyers and national platforms. So what does it change? Jordan thought about that. Maybe it changes what's acceptable. Maybe it makes the next person who wants to discriminate think twice. Maybe it shows that silence isn't the only option. He stood, walked to the window. And maybe it teaches kids like Keisha Johnson that speaking up matters. That truth has power even when the system tries to bury it. Ahmed nodded. That's enough, Mike. That has to be enough. The settlement money, $500,000, was divided as specified. Half went to the Jordan Family Community Foundation, which Michael had established to fund educational and athletic programs in underserved communities. The foundation would use the money to support the Wilmington Community Center and similar projects nationwide. The other half went to a legal fund for victims of housing and accommodation discrimination, helping people who couldn't afford lawyers to fight back against the Richardsons of the world. Jordan insisted on one additional provision. $50,000 of his portion would go directly to Mr. Tobias Freeman, supplementing the earlier gift, ensuring the old man's final years were comfortable and dignified. When Freeman received the check, he cried, not from gratitude for the money, but from the symbolism. The man who'd been beaten in 1960 for wanting to sit at a lunch counter was being honored by the greatest athlete of his generation for that sacrifice. It meant something, Freeman told Pastor Stone. All the pain, all the struggle, it meant something. The Greystone Inn closed its doors on February 28, 1992. The final guests checked out, the staff was laid off, and the building stood empty, waiting for its transformation. The Community Coalition, led by Andre Washington and funded by donations from across the country, began renovations in March. They would rename it the Welcome Inn, a direct rebuke to its previous exclusionary practices. The renovation would take 8 months. When it reopened, it would be managed by a Black woman named Patricia Dunn, Estella's cousin, employ a diverse staff trained in genuine hospitality, and feature a permanent exhibit in the lobby documenting the history, all of it, including the ugly parts. Because remembering was important. Forgetting was how history repeated. Jordan visited the construction site in April, quietly, without press. He walked through the gutted lobby where he'd been humiliated 9 months earlier. The marble floors were covered in plastic. The crystal chandeliers were down for cleaning. The oil paintings of Confederate generals were gone, donated to a museum where they could be contextualized properly. Andre Washington gave him a tour. We're keeping the bones of the building but changing everything else. New furniture, new art, new energy. By October, this will be the most inclusive hotel in North Carolina. Why keep it at all? Jordan asked. Why not tear it down and start fresh? Because pretending the past didn't happen doesn't fix anything. This building has history, bad history, but history. We're not erasing it. We're transforming it. Showing that spaces can change, that redemption is possible, that what was used for hate can be reclaimed for good. Jordan stood in the center of the lobby, closed his eyes, remembered that July night. The humiliation, the anger, the choice he'd made to speak up instead of staying silent. "Thank you," he said quietly. "We should thank you." "No, thank you for doing the hard work." I spoke up once. "You're doing the daily work of transformation. That's harder. That's the real courage." Outside, Wilmington had changed too. Not completely. Centuries of racism don't disappear in months, but measurably. The protests had evolved into action. The outrage had crystallized into organization. New Black businesses were opening. Voter registration was up. The city council had 3 new black members. One moment of discrimination hadn't fixed everything, but it had sparked something. A movement wasn't too strong a word. A reckoning might be more accurate. And at the center of it all, whether he wanted to be or not, was Michael Jordan. No longer just an athlete, now a symbol, a catalyst. A man who'd learned that staying silent was its own choice and not the one he could live with. The price had been high. He'd lost endorsements, faced death threats, endured criticism and hatred. His mother still received ugly phone calls. His mailbox still filled with vitriol alongside praise. But the Greystone Inn was closing. The community center was rising. Children across America were learning that speaking truth to power was possible, that excellence and integrity could coexist, that championships were wonderful but character was essential. Jordan left Wilmington that April afternoon feeling something like peace, not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, but because he'd done what he could, spoken his truth, used his platform, refused to accept that discrimination was just the cost of being black in America. And sometimes that had to be enough. The championship trophy felt heavier this time. Jordan stood at center court in Chicago Stadium, confetti falling like snow for the second straight year, the Larry O'Brien trophy in his hands again. The Bulls had just defeated Portland in 6 games, back-to-back championships, dynasty territory. But Jordan's mind wasn't on the game he'd just won. It was on everything that had happened between this moment and the last time he'd held this trophy. 12 months, 1 year, everything had changed. The crowd chanted three-peat, three-peat, already looking ahead to next season. Jordan just stood there feeling the weight of medal and expectation and something else, purpose beyond basketball. In the stands, his mother wiped tears. Beside her sat Mr. Tobias Freeman, who'd made the trip to Chicago against his doctor's orders because he'd told Dolores, "I need to see this. Need to see him win again after everything." The old man was 96 now, increasingly frail, but his eyes were sharp as he watched Jordan hoist the trophy. He remembered a different time, when black athletes weren't allowed to play in certain arenas, when excellence meant nothing if your skin was the wrong color, when speaking up meant risking everything, including your life. Jordan had risked everything. Not his life, but his career, his endorsements, his carefully crafted image. And somehow, impossibly, he'd won anyway. The post-game press conference was packed. Every major network, every sports publication, international press from Japan and Europe. They'd come for the championship story, but Jordan knew what they'd really ask about. The first question came from ESPN. "Michael, you've now won 2 championships, but this year was different. You became a voice on social issues. How do you reflect on this season beyond basketball?" Jordan took a breath. A year ago, he would have deflected, kept it safe, talked only about the game. Now he leaned into the microphone. "This season taught me that being excellent at basketball isn't enough, that using my platform matters, that staying silent to protect comfort isn't neutral, it's choosing the side of injustice." He paused. "Last July, something happened that changed me. I was discriminated against in my hometown. And I had a choice, swallow it like I'd been taught or speak up. I spoke up, and it cost me, but it also freed me." A reporter from North Carolina raised his hand. "The Greystone Inn closed. Some people lost jobs because of what happened. Do you feel responsible?" Jordan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed measured. "People lost jobs because the owner ran a discriminatory business, not because I spoke truth about it. I'm not responsible for the consequences of someone else's racism. I'm only responsible for refusing to accept it silently." Estella Dunn, now covering the finals for the Charlotte Observer, asked the question Jordan had been expecting. "The Freeman Jordan Community Center opens next month in Wilmington. What does that mean to you?" Jordan's expression softened. "It means that pain became purpose. That humiliation became transformation. That something built to exclude people is being replaced by something designed to include everyone. He looked directly at the camera, knowing Mr. Freeman was watching. It means the sacrifice of people like Tobias Freeman wasn't in vain, that the young people who will use that center will know their history, all of it, and understand that speaking up is how we honor those who fought before us. After the press conference, Jordan found his teammates celebrating in the locker room. Scotty sprayed champagne, Horace danced with the trophy, BJ led chants. The joy was genuine, earned through a grueling season. But Phil Jackson pulled Jordan aside, away from the chaos. 2 years ago, you were just a basketball player, Jackson said. The best basketball player, but that's all you were. Now you're something more. How does it feel? Jordan considered the question. Heavier, lonelier sometimes, but more real, like I'm finally being fully human instead of just performing excellence. The Buddha taught that enlightenment comes through integrating all parts of ourselves, Jackson said. The shadow and the light, the athlete and the activist, the champion and the wounded human. You're doing that work, Michael. It shows. A week later, Jordan returned to Wilmington for the groundbreaking ceremony of the Freeman Jordan Community Center. The actual construction was finished. They were just making it official with ceremony and speeches. The June heat pressed down as hundreds gathered around the new building. It was beautiful, modern architecture with basketball courts visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, a library on the second floor, computer labs, meeting rooms. A place designed for growth, learning, community. The old lot where they'd held that first gathering 11 months ago was now a state-of-the-art facility worth $32 million. Jordan's contributions, Nike's money, corporate sponsors, community donations, all of it coming together into something tangible. Pastor Jeremiah Stone, now 69, opened the ceremony with a prayer. Lord, we thank you for turning our pain into purpose, for taking one moment of discrimination and transforming it into years of opportunity for our children. We thank you for Michael Jordan, who could have stayed silent but chose to speak. And we thank you for Tobias Freeman, who bled so that Michael could walk freely. Let this building stand as testimony that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice when we refuse to stay silent. The crowd said amen like thunder. Keisha Johnson, now 11 years old, was chosen to cut the ribbon. She'd grown taller, more confident, her voice stronger when she spoke. Last year, Mr. Jordan told me to be so excellent they can't ignore me, Keisha said, reading from notes she'd written herself. I didn't understand it then, but now I do. Excellence isn't just about being good at things. It's about being good to people, about standing up when something's wrong, about using whatever gifts you have to make the world better. She looked at Jordan, standing beside her on the platform. Mr. Jordan is excellent at basketball, but he's also excellent at being brave. That's the kind of excellence I want. Jordan knelt beside her just like he had that first day. You already have it, Keisha. You've always had it. You just needed permission to use it. She cut the ribbon and the crowd erupted. Children poured into the building, running toward basketball courts and computers and possibilities that hadn't existed a year ago. Jordan stood with Mr. Tobias Freeman, watching the children explore their new space. The old man's hand shook as he gripped his wheelchair, but his voice was clear. I'm 96 years old, Freeman said. I've seen a lot, lived through Jim Crow, through the civil rights movement, through progress so slow it felt like standing still. But this, he gestured at the building, the children, the transformation. This is what it was all for. Your sacrifice made this possible, Jordan said. No, son. My sacrifice made your opportunity possible. Your courage made this possible. There's a difference. Freeman looked up at him. In 1960, they beat me for wanting to sit at a lunch counter. I thought that sacrifice would end discrimination. It didn't. But it made space for the next generation to fight smarter, louder, with more tools. And your fight, speaking up last year, that makes space for these kids to fight even better. That's how progress works. Not in one moment, but in a chain of moments, each generation adding their link. Jordan watched Keisha teaching younger kids how to shoot free throws, her confidence radiating. Watched Tommy Bradford, the shy 15-year-old from the exhibition game, now volunteering as a counselor, helping others find their voice. Watched parents who'd marched and protested and refused to let the Greystone Inn quietly disappear into history. This was the ripple effect. One moment of courage creating space for countless moments of transformation. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Webb in Chicago, the 11-year-old who'd watched the championship parade a year ago. "Mr. Jordan, I saw you win again, but the coolest thing wasn't the championship. It was what you said in the press conference about speaking up. My teacher showed us the video today. She said you're teaching us that greatness means more than trophies. Thank you for being great in all the ways. Marcus." Jordan saved the message, adding it to the collection he'd been keeping. The letters from children, the messages from families, the words that sustained him when the cost of truth felt overwhelming. Because there had been costs, still were costs. Some sponsors never came back. Some fans never forgave him for getting political. Some markets still treated him differently, carefully, like he was dangerous for speaking simple truths. But the rewards were immeasurable. Not in dollars, though Nike's gamble had paid off financially, but in impact. In children who saw him as more than an athlete. In families who felt less alone in their struggles. In communities empowered to demand dignity. The ceremony ended with Jordan making brief remarks. He kept it simple, speaking from the heart rather than prepared notes. "A year ago, I was humiliated in a hotel lobby in this city. I had a choice, stay silent or speak up. I chose truth. It cost me. But it also gave me something I didn't know I was missing, my full humanity. The freedom to be excellent and honest, angry and gracious, vulnerable and strong all at once." He looked at the children gathered, at their parents, at the elders who'd fought for decades before he was born. This building isn't just about basketball or computers or tutoring. It's about belonging. It's about knowing you have worth beyond what others decide. It's about being so excellent in your character that hate looks small next to your humanity. He pointed to the name carved above the entrance, Freeman Jordan Community Center. Tobias Freeman's name is first because his sacrifice came first. Because without people like him bleeding for basic dignity, I couldn't have stood up for my own. We're all links in a chain. Our job is to make sure the chain holds, to pass courage to the next generation, to refuse to accept that excellence should have to coexist with degradation. The applause was long, genuine, cathartic. People weren't just celebrating a building. They were celebrating a moment when one person's refusal to stay silent had sparked collective transformation. Later, as the sun set over Wilmington, Jordan stood alone in the gym of the new center. The smell was familiar, fresh paint, new wood floors, possibilities. He picked up a basketball, dribbled once, twice, rose for a jump shot. Swish. The sound echoed in the empty gym, pure and simple. Just basketball. Just the thing he'd always loved before it became complicated by fame and responsibility and the weight of representation. But even as he shot, Jordan knew he couldn't go back to when it was just basketball. Couldn't unknow what he'd learned. Couldn't unspeak the truth he'd told. And he didn't want to. Because this building, these kids, this transformation, mattered more than any championship. Not more than basketball, but beyond basketball. Something that would outlast his playing career, his endorsements, his highlight reels. Legacy. Real legacy. Not measured in points or rings, but in lives changed, in courage sparked, in truth spoken when silence would have been easier and more profitable. Jordan took one more shot. Swish. Then walked out of the gym, leaving the lights on for the kids who'd come tomorrow to practice their dreams. Outside, Wilmington stretched before him, his hometown, complicated and beautiful, wounded and healing, exactly like him. He thought about the Greystone Inn, now transformed into the Welcome Inn, opening in 4 months. Thought about Harold Richardson, bankrupt and bitter, living with the consequences of hatred disguised as tradition. Thought about the investigation that had revealed dozens of other businesses with similar practices, all now under scrutiny. One moment in a hotel lobby had started all this. One refusal to stay silent had created ripples that reached farther than Jordan could have imagined. His phone rang. "Phil Knight, Michael, the new commercial is ready. Want to see it before it airs." "What's it about?" "You, the last year, the hotel, the stand you took, the community center, all of it. We're calling it more than a game. It's about how excellence isn't just performance, it's character." Jordan smiled. "That's going to be controversial." "Good. Controversial means people are paying attention. And what you did deserves attention." After hanging up, Jordan drove through Wilmington one last time before heading back to Chicago. Past the construction site where the Welcome Inn was rising from the Greystone Inn's ashes. Past the 5th Street house where Mr. Tobias Freeman lived, his porch light on, a testament to survival and sacrifice. Past Laney High School, where a skinny sophomore had once been cut from varsity and learned that rejection was just motivation in disguise. Everything connected. Every moment leading to this moment. Every choice creating the next choice. Every act of courage making space for more courage. Jordan had started this year as just a basketball player, the best basketball player, but limited in his own way by fear of controversy, by desire for universal approval, by the belief that excellence was armor against discrimination. He was ending it as something more complete. Still a basketball player, still excellent, still champion, but also human. Flawed, opinionated, unwilling to stay silent when silence meant complicity. The price had been high, would continue to be high, but Jordan had learned something fundamental. Some costs are worth paying because the alternative, living as half yourself, speaking half your truth, pursuing excellence while accepting degradation, wasn't living at all. He drove toward the airport, toward Chicago, toward another season, toward a life that would never be simple again but was finally, fully his own. In the rearview mirror, Wilmington faded into darkness, but the light from the Freeman Jordan Community Center remained visible for miles, a beacon of what's possible when one person refuses to accept that this is just how things are. Michael Jordan, champion and human, athlete and activist, symbol and man, drove into his future knowing that some victories can't be measured in points. Some truths are worth speaking, no matter what they cost. And sometimes the greatest achievement isn't winning. It's being brave enough to be fully yourself while you do it. And that was the end of this story. Michael Jordan's courageous stand in 1991 reminds us that speaking truth to power matters, that excellence and integrity can coexist, and that sometimes the greatest victories happen off the court. We'd love to know, where are you listening from? Drop your location in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one. We share real stories about courage, resilience, and the human spirit that deserve to be remembered. And don't keep this to yourself. Share this video with your friends and family. Spread kindness, spread awareness, because stories like Michael Jordan's teach us that one person's courage can spark change that reaches far beyond what we can imagine. Thank you for listening. Until next time, remember, be so excellent they can't ignore you.